pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome again, everyone. Our first item tonight will be the appreciation awards for Jimmy Kozel, Ed Silva, David Spears, and Dave Walker. I'm going to invite Recreation Director Wright to the podium.
Good evening. If I could, it's my honor to ask Jimmy Kozel, Ed Silva, Dave Spears, and Dave Walker to join me at the podium. Can you guys come up, please? On March 27, 2014, the State Senate proclaimed Thursday, March 27th to be Developmental Disabilities Awareness Day in the state of Rhode Island. Individuals with developmental disabilities strive to be contributing members of their communities, including attaining meaningful employment. Jimmy Kozel, Ed Silver, Dave Spears, and Dave Walker have worked daily in their jobs to improve the quality of life for our residents and visitors in our town facilities. Their unselfish commitment and dedication to the town of Narragansett for many years of service is greatly appreciated. The jobs to the town of Narragansett they have performed are important to the operation of the facility they've worked in while empowering them to attain the dignity and independence in their daily lives. These awards are presented with great honor and acknowledgement with pride from each of the staff they've worked with throughout their community. So at this time, if I can ask the Town Council President to come down and make the awards presentation.
The first award is presented to Jimmy Kozel in recognition of your accomplishments and dedication for 26 years of service to the Narragansett Parks and Recreation Department. Your unselfish commitment and dedication to the town of Narragansett is greatly appreciated. I want to thank you on behalf of the Narragansett Town Council. Congratulations. Our next presentation goes to Ed Silva in recognition of your accomplishments and dedication for 8 years of service to the Narragansett Parks and Recreation Department. Your unselfish commitment and dedication to the town of Narragansett is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much on behalf of the town of Narragansett and the Town Council. Thank you. Our next presentation is to Mr. David Spears. How you doing? In recognition of your accomplishments and dedication for 35 years of service to the Narragansett Police Department and Fire Department, your unselfish commitment and dedication to the Narragansett Town Council and the town of Narragansett is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. And last but not least, to Dave Walker, in recognition of your accomplishments and dedication for 35 years of service to the Narragansett Parks and Recreation Department, your unselfish commitment and dedication to the town of Narragansett and the Town Council is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Our next item is a DEM grant award announcement. I'd like to welcome Mr. Barry and Ms. DiNuccio to the podium. And Representative Tanzi.
We wanted to make a public announcement about the award that Narragansett just received to help support the Narragansett Athletic Complex that we are in the process of still fundraising for. And Narragansett was awarded a $400,000 grant by the Department of Environmental Management by Governor Lincoln Chafee this past Thursday. And it's very exciting to tell everyone that that puts our fundraising at $1,087,000 at this point in time. So that's really a great thing that we've got going, and we still have 5.5 months to go with our fundraising. And I do want to tell you who else was on the grant writing team. We had Tammy McNeese and parent Michelle Gilbert, Representative Teresa Tanzi, Mike DeLuca, and Steve Wright, and also certainly our fundraiser, Dan Barry. So we're real excited about that.
Thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Tammy McNeese couldn't be here tonight, and she wanted me to add something. She wanted to especially thank Nancy because she knew that she would not mention herself. She was the one who coordinated the entire grant, gave it that unified voice that helped us to get the maximum amount possible. So I just wanted to thank Nancy.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the open forum. Upon approach to the podium, please state your name and address. Mr. Wojciechowski.
Stan Wojciechowski, Narragansett. Based on what I've been hearing, financial status at the different finance meetings I've been at, it seems that it's probably prudent that we ought to take the bonds off the ballot. It just seems that I hear we have over $100 million problem with pensions. We're labeled in critical financial status. I just would like to hear what our finance director has to say about that idea of going out there and getting mortgages and bonds when we are such in a mess financially. I've even last time heard something about bankruptcy. 14 years down the road, maybe. Yeah, it's kind of far. However, if there's a stock market downturn, some fellow told me about every 10 years we have one of these pullbacks in the stock market. That 14-year may be closer to 7-year. I don't know. I'd like to hear more data from our finance director on whether it's prudent or not to be out there and getting loans and putting ourselves more in debt when we are in a difficult financial situation. And I would hope that maybe at every meeting she could give us an update, because we pay a lot of money for our finance director, and I would really like to hear her opinion on is it right in our status right now to be out there going and get loans? Should we be fooling the taxpayer and thinking that we can afford that? Can we afford it? I'm not so sure we can afford it. I like her status. I'd like to have a professional here telling us, yes, we can afford it, no, we can't afford it, what the situation exactly is before the voter thinks that we can't afford it. Because right now, as I have been in many years, totally uninformed about bonds. And at this point here, it seems that may not be the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alba.
Al Alba, 24 Eagles Nest Terrace. I mean, it's been a long time since I've been going for an ice skating ring, but since that seems to be out of the picture, perhaps a pier would be appropriate at this time. I mean, like someone said also, it acts as a breakwater so that it wouldn't be so damaging if you do have storms. And a pier is actually what the Narragansett Pier is called, but we have no pier. Like one of the town managers says, I came here looking for the pier, and there was no pier. So I don't know why we can't go ahead and find some way of receiving money for that, either through Citizens Bank or since they're sponsoring a lot of the things on the beach. So maybe we can get up some money for up here, and that would prolong the beach season even longer than it is. So we need something to have something to go on after our summer is over, to continue with the bringing people down here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vengamish.
Hi, yeah. Richard Vagmish, 55 Osceola tonight. I'd just like to follow up what Stanley said and hope that the town council, if we, in the process of drawing up the bond issues, for each one of them clearly states what our current debt position is, so that the taxpayer goes there and looks at each bond issue and then says, do I want to add this bond issue to long-term debt for unfunded pension liability, unfunded OPEB, our current debt, and our road debt? I think it is essential. This is why these bonds pass. There never is anything negative said about them in the thing. Now, this is not saying anything negative about any one of those bond issues, but it is making the voter aware that this will go. And that, since I did predict bankruptcy in 14 years, and I will tell you why, if you remember a rather interesting article in last week's Providence Journal about cancer being cured by giving 10 million times the typical measles injection. And also about hepatitis cure. Very, very, very costly. These things, are going to bankrupt us. Healthcare costs are not going to be increasing at a decreasing rate. Don't ever believe it. Just pick up that article and just picture what 10 million injections would be for the measles vaccination if you think healthcare costs are going to be increasing at a decreasing rate.
Thank you. Mr. Traeger.
Good evening. Bob Traeger, the lone man from Jerusalem. I felt I just wanted to react to this article that was in the Independent this past Thursday. Restaurant slams permitting process. I read it a couple of times, but it's, even reading this couple of pages here, a couple of few paragraphs, just indicates how complicated we can make it when we want to. And when I say we, I'm talking about the town's administrative hierarchy. This couple, they allege to have gone through about $25,000 and never even had a hearing. It's interesting. But the one statement that I wanted to just say out loud in front of the public is the company, it's Walt's Roast Beef, apparently, and I don't know how they handle their franchises or anything. It's not that important to me, although I wouldn't mind a Walt's Roast Beef around because they're good. But anyway, the company called the process a nightmarish journey. And you know, that'll be the end of that. That article will all burn, you know, paper will go to the trash bin. And a lot of people are appealing for things to be done here. Well, that's one of the things that I would hope a town manager would work on. Getting a process for people that is transparent that it isn't a mix-mash of, oh, well, the lawyer better look at this, and, oh, well, wait a minute, let's send it over to this guy. Well, let's send it over to the zoning for a couple of minutes. It's just, what I call it is passing the buck. It's what government is notorious in doing. And I'd like to see you try to do something about changing that. Letting people know where they stand and not lead them down a garden path for 3 or 4 years like we have in Jerusalem.
Thank you. Oh, Ms. Walden.
Marie Youngkin Waldman, Overlook Road. Thank you. I'm involved with an organization called Where's the Town, which is a group of citizens in Narragansett. And Where's the Town would like to invite the town council members and anybody else who's interested to attend a public meeting this coming Thursday, May 22nd, from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Narragansett Senior Center, which will be to share comments about the recent URI students' riot that took place on May 3rd in Eastwood Look section of Narragansett. The town manager and officials from the town will also be present. And if you wish more information, you may go to where'sthetown.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Lois Oberg, 55 White Swan Drive. I've been keeping a low key, don't attend the meetings anymore, but with this student going on, I have been living on campus since 1986, and it doesn't get any better. It gets worse. I'm at the Village at Point Judith. We're only 66 homes, and 12 are summer, only people come for the summer, but we have 19 students. And right now, there's 11 of them that have their own little colony because they're all side by side and on top of each other. Came home from a trip about 3 weeks ago. Every sign on our streets is gone. The town will replace them after the students leave. And I said, what about next year and the year after? They're always gone. I had a workman, he had to go sit at the top of the street because he had people coming from out of town and he knew they wouldn't be able to find it. And it just goes on and on. We have signs. The town came and put, they look like they're 10 feet tall, no parking in the village. We have a sign at the beginning of the village, but they said the judge said we had to get them. I said, the judge? The students play it smart, they get a ticket, and they go to the court and say there's no signs, they didn't know there wasn't any parking. So we got now these 10-foot signs all over the village, and we bought in there, it's underground utilities, we don't have signs, we don't have poles and things like that. But it's on, I've had a drug bust, I've had ODs next door, and trying to break down your door at 2 a.m. in the morning because they think they're drunk and they think they're at their house. And it's kind of scary. You wake up in the middle of the night and someone trying to break your front door down. And nothing changes. Police come around in the morning, in the afternoon, but we don't see them at night. And they know it. We have 10 cars parking on the lawns at night. I've asked them, do you do that in your own home? They said no. And I said, why are you doing it here? They just don't care. They don't care about anyone. 108 is a race track. And the girls are just as bad. They want you to go faster. They come right behind you, and they're trying to push you. They're real rocket scientists. They don't know if I had to stop fast, what would happen to them. They just have no idea. But having 11 houses in a cluster, absentee landlords, they're making over $26,000 a year, and the next door they pay less real estate tax. Something's got to be done. That's ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask the chief something about the driving? Can I just ask you a question? I have noticed around town heavy feet on the pedal too. Can you just tell us a little bit about what we're doing? I've seen it all over the town myself, actually, and I just was curious how we're handling, because it does seem to be a problem lately. Boston Neck, 108.
Not just lately, it's always a
Oh,
problem. We have the area cars sporadically, either in the neighborhoods or on the main roads, when they're not at calls to be running radar. I'd have to tell you, look to find out how many citations we issue a year. It's 2,500, 3,000 citations a year, something like that. We do targeted patrols. Neighborhoods will call and complain. We'll do targeted patrol for a period of time. We'll put the speed trailer out. We also have a device that's infrared that doesn't use road tubes, that we can get a better speed or traffic study out of that, because no one knows there's anything there. It provides a very accurate study. Again, if we get complaints from particular neighborhoods, we go there. Otherwise, it's hit or miss with the 3 to 4 cars that are on the road when they do radar at different locations. But speeding is absolutely a problem. Every neighborhood, the main roads, and in talking to all the other chiefs, that's the main complaint that every police department receives, is speed complaints.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Stewart?
Carol Stewart, Eastwood Look. Because of Lois Oberg's comments, I have a question for the council. All the street signs are missing on the south side of Eastwood Look, and many of them on the north side, plus the stop signs disappear at an intersection which tries to slow down people coming down Sakana Boulevard, and we call several times a year. My question is, without having those signs replaced, is that a public safety issue? Now, I know this is a nuisance thing and probably costs somewhat money for the town to replace these street signs. Stop signs is a lot more serious than perhaps a street sign, but to me, if someone drives into a neighborhood and there's no street signs, even the fire or police, I mean, I know the locals, must know most of the streets, but if I go on the other side of Eastwood Look and I want to see something in particular, I don't know what street I'm on. I'm saying, is this Newport Lane, or is this Lincoln, or is this? I mean, is there a policy about replacing? Because I heard her say that they were told when the students leave, they'll replace the signs. I don't know. I'm asking the question. Thank you.
So, Pam, is there an answer to that question as far as the missing signs, because the DOT replaces them as they visibly notice that they're missing? How does that work?
They all went missing after the last big weekend before graduation. I did report it to the DPW director. They're working on it. Right now, they're working on signs for the beach, and that seems to take some priority right now, but they're definitely, we are aware of it, working.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller?
John Miller, St. Louis Street. It seems to me that we're doing all the things that other towns do except one thing, and that is fine the landlords. If the landlord has a disorderly house, then the landlord ought to pay a penalty. Now, that would get him excited. Can you imagine what Stanley Wojciechowski would say if he had to pay a fine because his students misbehaved? That would get their attention. It's done everywhere else in Rhode Island, not every place, but many, many towns. And that's where, these are the landlords are the people that are making, I think Lois mentioned $26,000 a year, or whatever it is. It's a lot of money and a lot of investors. I mean, we got a Mr. Santos or Mr. Gilchrist, I forget which one, talked about the the landlord living in Hawaii who said, I don't know anything about this, aloha. We ought to find the landlords.
Thank you. Looks like we're finished the open forum. Move on to the consent agenda. Anyone have an item to remove?
I do. Number 4.
Motion to approve the consent agenda, items 1, 2, 3, 5,
wait.
6. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just number 3 for an update, if
Sure.
we could get number 3 as an update, because that's the road bond, so I think people in the community want to hear where that is and what's going on.
So can we approve it and then do the update? Or do you want to do? Okay.
Can we pull that one, James?
Sure. Motion to approve numbers 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 3, a motion to approve change order number 1 for additional quality control testing services performed by Thielsch Engineering during Phase 1A of the roadway improvement project in the amount of $1,105.98.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't have an issue with it or anything, but Pam, if we could talk about this is related to the road bond, so we could just kind of highlight where we are with the road bond in terms of the whole 17 million, so that people people here and at home can know what's going on.
Yes, I've got it right here. I talked to the director of DPW about this, and he said that the work that we have done for us on the testing exceeded the amount by 1,106 to round it off. As far as where we are on the road bonds, you have approved 4 million. If I can turn to Laura, our finance director, she can probably give you a better update on where we are on the financing of that than I can right off the top of my head. Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome. Actually, very timely question. On my desk is a draft of the offering circular that's going to go out within the next month for $4.1 million to bond that road authorization. And that's the 4.1 of the 17 that was approved.
And Phase 1B, what's anticipated for starting like Phase 1B?
Jeff, you're going to have to, do you know the phasing in of the road bond? Dollar amount wise, I just know that.
Or just general timeframes?
The 4.1.
Because people ask about their road,
That's fine. The 4.1 in total is planned to be spent within the next 12 months or so. No, that's fine.
Phase 1B is, well, backing up a little bit, as you know, the project has been divided up into a number of phases over many years. Phase 1B is the work that is slated for 2014, includes a selection of roads from throughout the community. All of those roads are in design right now. A number of them are at what's called a 90% level, which means we're ready to send them to CRMC for permitting. Virtually each one of those roads is going to require a CRMC assent because of proximity of wetlands or drainage that enters the wetlands. So we anticipate being before CRMC shortly with a good portion of those roads. The survey work continues on the rest of them, and again, the Phase 1B roads are slated for 2014 construction, Matt. I don't have a list in front of me.
No, thank you. Just so we have a general,
I can get you a list of the Phase 1B roads.
No, I'm not looking
and
for it,
status.
yeah, I just want so people at home, can understand what the general phasing is. So Phase 1B, we're in 2014, and then we'll go from there, and the 4.1 is related to that.
Yeah, because there was road work done last year that would be refinanced under the 4.1, and then it also provides the financing for Phase 1B as well.
So Jeff, can I just ask you a quick question? Where will the public go if they want to see if their road's going to be done? Is that going to be somewhere for them to review at some point?
Yeah, there's a meeting Wednesday evening here at 7 o'clock for a certain group of the Phase 1B roads, the ones that we think we can implement sooner rather than later. Those residents have already been notified by Public Works via letter, so we will have an informational meeting that evening. as the status of the Phase 1B roads becomes a little bit more solid, we can put some information up on the website as well for folks as to what their schedule is.
Good, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Number 4, a motion to approve construction services for replacement of the Town Hall rear service doors from Abcor Restoration Company, Inc., in the amount of $10,856.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Mr. McLaughlin?
My question is, why does it cost $10,856 to replace those two doors?
I'm going to have to rely on Mr. Suzerain. Are you? No, we're not either one. We'll have to get back to you with that answer.
Well, I went out and looked at the door. One's in pretty bad repair. It's kicked in. The panel's kicked in on it. The other one seems like it's okay. The $10,000 seems like an awful lot of money to me for two doors. I was wondering if there was a historic attachment to it or something like that.
I don't think there's any historic attachment to it. I think that it's security. And I think that it's the fact that they're fiberglass paneled aluminum frame doors with
Yeah,
hardware.
I think the one that's damaged is a plywood. Anyway, I think, and at the very least, maybe we should put it out to bid.
You want to table this motion?
It's okay with me.
Any preference? Vote on it, table it?
Is that what you, Doug, are you not comfortable?
Yeah, that's okay with me. We need more information on it.
Okay.
Okay, so,
One door looks pretty good to me. The other one has been damaged, actually. It's kicked in on the bottom. But it doesn't look like a $10,000 or $11,000 project to me.
okay, so I'll support that if we want to take a little more time.
So continue it to the next meeting?
Makes sense?
Yeah, that's fine. We should have more information by then.
I'll look at that and I'll find out, bring it back.
All right, the motion to continue this item number 4 to the next meeting.
I'll move that motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to old business, number 8, a motion to adopt an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 46 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Miscellaneous Offenses.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Discussion, Ms. Bonanno?
No, we discussed increasing the fines at the last meeting, and so it came back, and this is a first reading, so I'm open to increasing them to the fullest level if we can. So I would be open to a discussion. I mean, we met and we increased them slightly, but I could support going to the max.
I agree with that. I made that clear at the last meeting, which was a very difficult meeting to sit through about what's going on at Eastwood Look. And so, yes, I think I said the law is best when there's clarity in the law. And so I would go to the maximums, the statutory maximums. And Mark, if you don't have those available right now, I don't know if you do.
The maximum that the town can impose a fine by state law is $500 unless you get some special enabling act to increase it. So 500 is your cap per offense or per violation. And looking at these, we've got a mix and match of some that are below 500, some I think are coming right up against it. If you want to make them all 500, we'd have to treat this as a new first reading, because I think you're changing what you did to the last meeting, and then have this come back on for adoption at your next meeting.
One of the issues I think we have with this proposal, some of these include a range, correct?
Yes.
And
Minimum, you said some of them with a minimum and a maximum.
so if you have a minimum and a maximum, or a range, are we proposing the officer, if their mail-in ticket, has to determine the amount and send? I don't understand how that works.
We have talked to Chief Hoxie about this, and Chief, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but since these are mail-in tickets, the only time they would minimum and maximum would apply is if they were appealed and they go before the municipal court judge. As a rule, what the chief suggested, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that he would have his officers find the minimum.
Minimum.
Then you would, if it was appealed to the municipal court, it would go, that would be the judge's discretion.
Dean, do you have thoughts on going to the maximum? Do you have strong feelings?
Actually, and while you're up there, I'm interested to know, because I'm wholeheartedly behind, penalizing the population that deserves the maximum fine, but fully realizing there are unintended consequences when people's families come down during the summer and they may get a little out of hand and, they want to teach them a lesson. You might not want to be, impacting cousins, uncles, brothers, so for one offense. I'm just sensitive to making the point with the students. If you could answer the question in that context, how do you balance the scales?
Without singling out a particular class or title of person, we would have to have it across the board. So if it's $500, it's $500 for my son or anybody else that lives in Narragansett or is affected in Narragansett, irregardless. I don't think we can have a double standard as far as a fine for a particular class of people. You as the body determine the amount that you want us to fine. There have been instances in law enforcement, and not just Narragansett, throughout the country, and I believe it came up in the recent issue in Cranston, where one of the issues came up that the officers stopped writing so many tickets because they felt it was unfair, the dollar amount of the parking tickets. Now, that's really not their discretion to decide that. However, human nature, if you have anyone with an open container of beer, is it going to be more likely they tell them to dump the beer out and use their discretion, or give them a $500 fine? We can mandate zero tolerance, that if the maximum amount is chargeable, that everybody affected is $500, but that means everybody affected year-round. I don't know if they
That's
answer
exactly
that.
what I was after.
Okay.
I just think the pendulum, sometimes it swings, and I think now, let's say we went to the maximums, and I think we need a tone of that we're going to take a tough stand with these situations. And if we start to see a lot of situations where families in the summer are getting this $500 fine because they happen to have wine in a plastic cup, then maybe the pendulum can swing back. But I just think that's why I want you to come forward. I mean, do you think that would happen in the? I mean, I mean, if you don't have strong feelings either way, I really kind of want to get.
No,
I mean,
we will do as the council wishes, and I don't have any fear that the guys are not going to issue these citations because of the dollar amount. I think that they'll do what they're asked to do. They're going to do the job. It's as frustrating for us to deal with this continually as it is for, certainly not for the residents because we get to leave it, but it is as frustrating to continually deal with the same issue again and again. So certainly if the council sees it fit to go to the maximum, then that's what we'll enforce.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Danuccio.
Thank you. I stand before you tonight as the coordinator of the Narragansett Prevention Partnership. It was my doing that I encouraged a conversation with Councilwoman Bonanno about raising these fines, the alcohol-related fines. In the world of prevention, this is a best practice. If the fines are not a deterrent, they become insignificant and they don't do what we would really like them to do, which is to deter unruly or illegal behavior. So I applaud your efforts to increase the fines in any way. I will leave it up to your discretion as to what those numbers should be. But I have an additional piece that I'm interested in having you consider, and that is for a portion of those funds, the increased fines, to go to the Narragansett Prevention Partnership. This is not something that is unheard of in the state. I have ordinances from Barrington, Smithfield, East Providence, who all enact certain fines, certain alcohol-related fines. A percentage of that money goes back to the Prevention Coalition in order to help assist with preventing the activity in the first place. As you know, the funds for the Narragansett Prevention Partnership have really seen a cut in the last couple of years. We're functioning on $18,000 for the year to do prevention for the entire community of Narragansett. And it's really, we've got our hands tied behind our back. So any increase that we could see would be helpful to all of our prevention activities. Right now, with $18,000, we have to look at where we can get the biggest bang for our buck, and that's usually at the middle and high school age. Years ago, we used to get a stipend from the town when they were doing special appropriations, which they were all cut out a number of years ago. So we don't see any additional funding from the town. So this would really be something that would help us do a better job with trying to prevent some of these activities. So I don't know if you have any other questions for me on that.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. Mr. Wojciechowski?
It's obvious that you just must maximize the fine. I mean, here we got a fellow out here, he wants to fine and tax the landlord. You got some drunk out there, and he wants to fine the landlord for this drunk that's out there, whether it's a child or a young person. How wrong is that? That I'm going to get fined for the behavior of somebody that wants to go out and drink and misbehave. The only deterrent, this is the only deterrent, and 500 is nowhere near enough, nowhere near enough. These students are so rich, they can afford a $2,000 fine. And I implore you to go to the state and try to get that thing increased to $2,000 because we have to get their attention. They only pay $2,000 a month for rent. That's such a minimum fine, that's almost nothing. That's why we have the problem. We don't have the deterrent. The money's not enough. At 500, it's not enough. That's the problem. And, you know, I congratulate all the prevention activities, but whatever we've done in the past is not working because we still have the problem. Every cent here needs to go to enforcement. Our police people need to have more dollars so they can get out there and maybe get some part-time staff on the weekends and the holidays, whenever necessary. Every dollar has to go out there to stop the drunk behavior. And therefore, this is the first step. This is only the first step. After you maximize this, you go for an additional, you get to the state and you want it tripled. And you keep on doing it until it works. That's the problem. Either you leave or something happens and it's not consistent. We continue to get that increased until it has an effect, until it works. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask Mark a question about what Stanley just said? If we were to increase to the cap to the fullest 500, could you take that money and just use it all for enforcement?
Yeah, you could. I mean, basically, the fines go to the general fund. I know we've discussed, you made a request to look at earmarking it for certain other things. We're talking about that internally. I know some other communities do. We have to look at how it's structured. I know Laura and Pam had some different thoughts on it, but you can earmark portions, or generally it goes to general fund. You can say, I'm going to use it for enforcement purposes. So you have some options, depends upon how you want to structure it.
Thanks.
Mr. Vengermish.
Well, there is another deterrent to this, and that is charging the landlords at 150% of property value as we do businesses, because clearly the discussion here that these houses are in a business, they're a rental business. And I know a couple of years ago the tax assessor was not happy about really doing an aggressive work with this house is a business, this house isn't. But clearly, if those 11 houses in a block aren't businesses, we've got to get on the stick here and at least make them businesses and make them pay more.
Thank you. Mr. Ferrandi. Mr. Ferrandi.
council members. Thank you for taking this up and revisiting this. You know, these are the most simplest fines that are going right after the issue, the problem that's here. I don't understand how would anybody have an issue with raising a fine for urinating and defecating in public? Who are we really protecting here? You know, we know the fines. If it's good for me, it's good for the whole town. So, and the police, you know, I would say the fines need to be aimed at police enforcement so you can keep doing the job. So you're on the right track with this. There's many other things. I mean, these are the most simplest fines. I mean, we have a police response ordinance that we passed 2 years ago. That's not really being used. So, I mean, I read the police reports every week, and I don't need to see any 100, 200, 250 more parties. We need something to control this. So this makes a statement. It's needed, and please try to do the right thing and make it go into the general fund so you can have some more enforcement. It's not all about enforcement, but it's certainly a first step. You know, a lot of times the police are into these neighborhoods. Our police force isn't designed as riot patrol, but that's what we have on a lot of times on a Friday and Saturday night. That's another issue. But let's get to this first and increase the fines as high as you can. Thank you, council members.
I have no objection to raising the fines to the maximum. I don't see why we wouldn't at this point. We can always revisit it and go lower later on. Mr. Ames.
I have a question. Is it possible that these tickets could be turned into summons and require them to come to municipal court and let the judge decide between the maximum and the minimum? I mean, I share Councilwoman Hagopian's concerns with the rest of the townspeople other than the students. So, I mean, if you issue a summons to one of them, they have to take a day out or a night out and come in to municipal court and then face the judge. Is that possible?
I think it is.
He said it was.
Yeah.
Depends on how you want to structure it. I mean, the pay by mail was a matter of administrative simplicity. You know what the fine is, and you can write a check and send it in. That's been applied to a lot of offenses, not just this type, but a lot of offenses in the ordinance violations. Those that have a range, those usually require an appearance to come in and let the court or the judicial system make a determination as to what is going to be the penalty imposed if you're going to admit your guilt or if you're found guilty. And in some cases, because you don't want the judiciary to have the discretion, you're going to put a minimum mandatory, so there's nothing can go below that, or a maximum. So it depends on how you want to structure it.
It just seems to me we take it out of the policeman's hands, you know, so he would be able to send it to the municipal court. That's my only.
I disagree. You know, if my son's walking around with an open container and he shouldn't be, fine him, maximize the, really, I mean, I just,
Well,
I don't
he
agree.
has a point where, you know, putting more pressure on the arrestee or the person who's summons to do more than just write a check, that may have more of an impact. But it causes more work for
See, it's
Mr.
never-
Traeger?
I say just raise them. Just raise them for everybody.
I don't know the ins and outs on how you handle this, but the fine's 100%. I mean, you got to do what you got to do there. But I just thought of another one. I know landlords take damage deposits, and rather high ones usually for summer rental type properties, and this is not summer rental, but it's kind of equivalent to it, and probably worse. Why couldn't there be some kind of a deposit for disturbing the peace, or deposit for, and if the house is run well and we don't have any problems in the house, then whoever is paying who's paying, we got to get at the person that's paying the bill too, and that would be the father and mother sometimes of the students, or this could be a grandparent, or it could be, but if those people somehow can be sensitized to the problem here. If they're in New Jersey or in New York or in Pennsylvania, they're probably not thinking every day about what's going on in the neighborhoods of Narragansett. But maybe they would if they put a $2,000 deposit down for disturbing the peace, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure what the word, you're the lawyer. There's a lawyer here. We could come up with a terminology for what they could do, but then you'd have something you could go after, and it would protect the landlord somewhat, because the landlord, as much as I realize they need to take responsibility, but listen, I've rented property myself a little bit up in New Hampshire a couple of times. We have a little place up there, and I want to tell you, people can talk a great, great line, and they seem like they're the nicest people in the world, and all of a sudden, the walls come down. It's not that easy. You know, people can speak and make things sound great. Okay, anyway, that's my suggestion.
Thank you. Ms. Stewart?
Thank you. I appreciate you having a lengthy discussion on this. It sounded easy at first, but then it starts to sound a little more complex. I'm in favor of a maximum fine to send a message, and so be it. If residents, this should not be discriminatory. If a resident misbehaves or does something, you know, if a resident assaults somebody, I mean, you don't weigh, oh, gee, you live here, no, I don't think we want to do this to you. It doesn't work that way. So whatever is decided, it has to apply town-wide. But it sounds like there's a little confusion about the involvement of the police, and I know they don't like to go to municipal court because it takes their time. And so, you know, I think you need clarification, and I heard some discussion, and I'm not clear on that either. Can it be mailed in, or do they go to a court, or, because if they go to court, I believe a policeman has to be present. So I would like that point to be clarified. The other thing is Newport asked for enabling legislation, and they can fine up to $1,000. So as Mr. McSally stated, the town can do that. I've talked with General Assembly members just within the past month and was told by our local representatives and senators that the Narragansett just has to ask for it and they could get it. I don't think we need to go that far right now.
So I was just, Mark, can you clarify, can you repeat what happens with the ticket process that James just spoke? Just for the audience as well, just I want to go through it one more time.
For those summonses, for those offenses that are designated as option to pay by mail, if the officer issues a summons for littering and has a $50 fine on it, they'll check the $50 fine, say pay by mail, there's a ticket, they can write a check and send it in, I admit my guilt, and that's the end of the ticket, whatever it might be. And there are a whole list of those that are eligible for that type of treatment. If it's not eligible for that type of treatment, then it's a personal appearance required. They have to come into municipal court and then plead guilty, not guilty, or deal with the court, or at that point in time. We only bring in court, we always have a court officer present. We don't necessarily have the arresting officer present every day. It's only those cases where someone is pled not guilty and wants a trial that we bring in the arresting officer. And we try to do that in batches, so that if the officer has 5 or 6 cases, we bring them all in the same night, so we're not paying overtime constantly bringing in officers. So pay by mail on the summonses that are permissible ends the matter. Sometimes people have a pay by mail option. They elect to plead not guilty anyway and come in. So it happens in municipal court as well.
Did that help, Carol?
I appreciate the clarification. Thank you very much. One other quick comment is the issue of the landlords or the homeowner or the realtors. Let's keep that on the table. They are not getting away scot-free with this whole issue, because if they manage their properties properly, monitor and enforce their leases, then many times these situations would never develop, because the wording is in some of the leases. No parties, no this, no parking on lawns. So let's just say there's another element here that has to take responsibility. We have great ones, and we have ones who don't look at their properties until the end of the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. McSally, one other question. The pay-by-mail, and maybe Chief Hoxie too, that was instituted a few years back just for, I guess it was paperwork reasons, things like that?
I think it was administrative simplicity, managing the court process itself, managing the prosecution office, because if we did not have a pay-by-mail option, it requires, tracking the court date, tracking the appearance, giving the notice of non-appearance when they don't come in. So it became an issue of routine type violations that were, like a water violation, a speeding violation. They could pay by mail. Those were the ones that would handle administratively that way. We've expanded it to some of the animal control ordinances and some of the general criminal offenses also. I don't know, Chief,
Like, for example, on May 3rd, were those arrests, or were they?
I don't know, those were, I'd have to defer to the chief on those.
I'm just curious, they were like pay by mail, summons, I just don't know.
All of these offenses are arrests. They are arrestable offenses. The consuming, the possession, those are violations. They're non-custodial. The disorderlies can either be a custodial arrest, transported to the station, processed and released, or they can be released with a pay-by-mail summons. Some of the logic behind going to the option of a pay-by-mail summons was strictly the ability to quickly process as many people as possible and move them along. Month of September, midnight shift alone, 130 arrests. Those arrests, most of them were alcohol-related, urinating in public, disorderly conduct. The vast portion of those are issued citations on scene. Social host issues. Unless there are extenuating circumstances, once the party's cleared, the renters are issued a citation on scene for social host. It's an arrest, but it's an arrest released on scene. So it strictly allows us to go to an incident, deal with it, clear it, go to the next incident without having to transport 5 to the station, lock them up. Our facilities are not that large. There are those instances where we absolutely bring them in if possible, unless it's a violation which is non-custodial.
Do you have the option of giving the summons or making the physical arrest?
For a misdemeanor, yes. We have the option, absolutely. And there are those that need the trip to the station and to sit for a while.
And the arrests are just considered custodial, they couldn't leave the scene. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yeah, they're detained long enough to process them, give them the citation, and then they're released. So, yes, it's custodial, but...
And that takes an officer off the road or out of the neighborhood for a significant amount of time, right?
It ties him up until that, if it is a custodial issue, that officer then leaves and goes back to the station. He's lost for that time.
If you decided you wanted to make some of the issue of how they process them is a police discretion. The issue of how we process them for penalty purposes is your discretion. Do you want them, if you want to remove some of these from pay by mail and force a physical appearance in municipal court, we can do that on some of the offenses if you chose to do that. We would still need to keep the option of, as the chief just indicated, process at scene and release, because otherwise we can't handle the volume.
If we go to the maximum, then we can maybe use the increased funds that will go into the general fund, which James has suggested in another agenda item, to pay for more details, more enforcement, and then you guys would have the discretion as the police to decide when you have more of manpower, when you're enforcing, you should have the discretion if, disturbing the peace can be disturbing the peace or disturbing the peace, right? So, right. And that's the one who's doing this, right? It's an assault and battery situation you're going to want to bring to the police station. But I think if we can, I don't want to take away, I don't want to tie their hands. I think that would be, I'd rather have increase the ability for them, for the police, than to use their discretion on go to the maximums, so then you have the funds for more details, and then you guys would have discretion because you have more, so you'd have more opportunities to bring people into the station.
Because on May 3rd, for example, there were only, I think, 3 officers on duty when it first erupted. So taking an officer away for an hour or so would have been counterproductive, correct?
Absolutely. And it was, at that point, it was just trying to maintain the scene. Once they had enough on hand to start taking kids into custody, they were brought to a cruiser, locked in the cruiser in handcuffs, and left until they could go back and get enough. And it wasn't until basically the end of the scene where they did anything with anybody.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any more thoughts?
So can we modify the motion?
Mr. Santos?
Yeah, I'm Joe Santos from 29 Hope Lane, and I just want to let you know that I'm also in favor of the maximum penalty, the $500. And also, I believe that the homeowners that rent these houses should also be held responsible, by either, at the beginning of the year, taking a fee or increasing the registration fee. Each one of them, has at least, 5 bedrooms, and they protect themselves by charging each student at least $500 as a deposit, a security deposit. And a lot of times, the deposit is never returned to them, so, they protect themselves. But the town of Narragansett has no way, as of right now, of protecting themselves. And, all these calls, by the police and the fire department and all that incurs, a large cost on all the taxpayers in Narragansett. And I think that we should either incur, have a fee for anyone that rents their property, or, some other way. Anytime that, the police responds, to these noisy complaints, they should be charged. There's towns today that charge, for the ambulance going to a home to pick up, someone, to the hospital. So why couldn't we charge, for the police each time they respond to these noisy complaints? So, the taxpayers shouldn't be paying for all these resources that I used, for things that, really shouldn't be,
So, Mark, isn't there an ordinance on the books? Just try to remind the public, I can't remember what it was called,
There's a response cost ordinance for cost above and beyond normal routine, salaries and administrative costs, which the chief and I are reviewing right now for that incident in May.
So that exists.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chorney?
Be interested to know, are these fines collected 100% every year?
I don't know the exact percentage. I'd have to defer to the municipal court or to Ann. I think we have a fairly good, for the in-person, or the mail-in and the in-person appearance, we have a fairly good collection rate. There are some people we never get service on. They're out of state, that may disappear, so I think there's some of that that doesn't get collected eventually. But I don't know the percentage.
It would be interesting to know that in terms of the efficacy of these, of the level of fines. If people are just saying, okay, it's 300 or 400, then they leave the state and they forget about it. And that could be, not to pick on seniors at URI, but, is that a group that possibly could say, fine, I'm a senior, I'm graduating in 3 weeks, so forget about it. So just a point, and maybe even connected to URI before they graduate, they check the records to see if they've got an outstanding fine.
I was just going to say, what is the implication? So if they don't pay, they do leave the state, what happens? If you get an outstanding action at the state level, it might be different than in the municipal level.
Yeah, there's probably little to no impact unless they come back into the state and it's picked up when they're in Rhode Island, but we're not out chasing somebody on an ordinance violation that moved out of state because it's just not efficient. It's not cost effective.
Yeah. Any further thoughts from the council?
So the request is to make them, if you want to treat this as, if you want to change what you did 2 weeks ago, you would go back to treating this as a new first reading of the ordinance, and you would make a modification so that all of them are now at $500. It's not a range, it's not below $500. So the 4, disturbing the peace, urinating or defecating in public, consumption of alcoholic beverages, unlawful possession, social host, and public nuisance would all go to a $500 fine, flat. There's no up or down, no minimum, no maximum. It's the $500.
I support that.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Yeah, that's fine. Then if it passes, it'll be back on for a second reading 2 weeks from now.
Do we have to approve the motion as amended?
Yes, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
4-1, the motion passes. I skipped one of the items, a motion to schedule a public hearing on the 2014 Community Development Block Grant application for June 16th, 2014.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
What date is that?
New business, number 9, a motion to discuss the elements of the housing proposed rehabilitation program.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Can Mike come up and just kind of summarize that for me?
Mr. Luca? Is he here?
Thank you. This is intended to be a component of our upcoming CDBG application that will be going in after the public hearing that you just scheduled a minute ago. And the reason we wanted to bring it to your attention this early is because it's a little bit different. In collaboration with Jeff Marchant from the East Greenwich Housing Consortium, who is our CDBG consultant, we've devised this housing rehabilitation program request that we intend to submit for CDBG funding. It's somewhat different than other programs. You don't ask, for example, you don't ask for a specific dollar amount, $10,000 or $20,000. It's the dollar amount is actually to be determined. So that kind of creates a little different sort of a format. What I'd like to do is ask Mr. Marchant, because he is here, to come up and give you an overview of the details working from the memorandum that he has provided you in the packet. So I'd like to bring in Mr. Marchant.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I came to work in Narragansett a year plus ago, and I was dealing with contracts as old as 08. And I hadn't seen a housing rehabilitation line item in any of the contracts, so it's a pretty normal activity that any community that participates in CDBG does. So I asked town manager and the finance director about it, and they supported creating a housing rehabilitation grant program in Narragansett. I wanted to come tonight because I have a conflict with the meeting on the 16th of June, at which this item will be reviewed for approval. And I wanted to give council an opportunity to ask questions or whatever they wanted to do with the line item.
Any discussion, questions?
I was going to ask you just to do a little overview.
Yeah, it's a well-established program. It's been operating in the state since 1988. And at that time, I was running it in Southern Rhode Island. I worked at South County Community Action, so I've been involved in it for many years. It's standardized as the same application used throughout Southern Rhode Island now. This is Narragansett's the 9th town in the consortium. They all operate the same way, basically. 4 of the towns that I work with do loans, 4 towns do grants, and Narragansett is being proposed for a grant program. We take applications from homeowners, and they can either be occupants or own rental property. As long as the property is occupied by persons of low to moderate income, it's eligible to be considered for housing rehabilitation. If it's owner-occupied, the household, and that means any person living in that home, the aggregate income can't exceed 80% of the median income as adjusted for household size. So that is reviewed. We take current third-party income verification, and we get last year's taxes as a check and a balance against what they're telling me now and what they're showing as the IRS is having earned last year. If that passes muster, they do apply for certain items. We go to each house and we do an inspection to make sure there's no code violations being left unaddressed. That work is written up, sent to the homeowner for review and approval. Once approved, it goes out. We maintain a list of contractors who are licensed and registered to work in the state and insured. Homeowners can have anybody they want bid on the work as long as they're bidding the same thing. They need to get the bid packet. They also have to be licensed and registered and insured. The program will award the lowest dollar amount based on the bids. Homeowners can pick anybody they want, really, to do the work, but they pay the difference in cost between low bid and the cost of the guy they want. Liens are filed to protect the federal investment. I think I outlined those in the memo.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
Number 10, a motion to review and discuss the limitations imposed by the deed restriction on the property owned by the Narragansett Affordable Housing Corporation at 141 Clark Road.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. DeLuca.
Just a brief explanation, and it goes back a few years. If you recall, the affordable housing that was built on Clark Road was done in 2 buildings. There were 40 units total. And in the process of doing that, there was this other property across the street, about an acre in size, that had an old farmhouse on it. And that farmhouse got demolished because it was in very, very poor condition. But that was also intended to be an affordable development. There's a long, long story about it, but I'm going to give you the short version, which is that it was originally approved for up to 4 dwelling units by the planning board, 4 affordable dwelling units. There was a court case, and the ultimate result was that out of that court case, the number of dwelling units was reduced to 3. But during the entire process, even from the proposal to the end through the court case, the property was designated for tenancy by people of age 55 or older, and so that limits the potential tenant pool, obviously. Once again, the East Greenwich Affordable Housing Consortium is considering purchasing this property from the Narragansett Affordable Housing Corporation, which is the arm of Narragansett Housing Authority. And they are asking at this point that the council acquiesce to a removal of that limitation such that it would still be targeted to low, moderate income housing tenants, but without any age restriction. Again, Mr. Marchand is here. He could give you a little more detail on the background of his request.
I'm the chairman of the board of the Washington County Community Development Corporation, and we've been in conversation with Narragansett Affordable Housing. They want to sell this parcel. We're interested in purchasing this parcel. The problem is we cannot get financing for age-restricted housing. So I understand that this parcel came to the town with that restriction on it. My attorney has done some research and found that the original owner is a revoked LLC. So if this council were interested in removing the deed restriction, we'd have to probably go to court to get the deed restriction removed from the original transfer to the town. So we have a low-income housing tax credit deal we're working on in several towns. This could be part of that, or not.
Mr. DeLuca? What was the reason to have the 55 age restriction on the building in the first place? What was the reason for that?
It goes back to the 2001 Town Council, who, when they acquired the land from Camp Jory, designated it at that time as elderly housing. And then, as time came forward, found out that the state and the feds were reducing the amount of funding they were giving to elderly, which is, I believe, 62 and over? Age 62 and over. So they saw a problem with not having a funding pot and moved to the next category of like tenancy, that being there's a different category just for age 55 and over. So I think the short answer to your question, Ms. McLaughlin, is that the town council in 2001 wanted it to be elderly housing, and they actually designated the side, the Camp Jory side, for 50 dwelling units. That got reduced to 40 through the process.
And what has changed since then? Why would we want to change that?
Well, I believe, I don't want to speak for Jeff, he's having a hard time finding a funding source for age 55 and over. Once again, there have been changes at the federal level in the amount of money that is allotted to these different pots of money and pots of funds. But when I look at the statistics, I see that we do have a need for creation of housing for families also. So in terms of being compliant with the town's comprehensive plan or the affordable housing plan, I don't think that would be a grave departure. I think that would be, a decision like this would comply. But I think that what Mr. Marchand is trying to do is acquire sufficient funding to be able to build the structure and fill it with the tenants who are income qualified. Have I said anything out of order?
Mike, can I ask you a question about this? Would
Sure.
that help us reach that 10% of
Yes.
housing that we have been striving to reach for a long time?
Yes, all three of the dwelling units would be countable toward our 10% requirement.
Okay, thanks.
Do you want to add anything that I might have glossed over?
Yeah, it's just, the Rhode Island Housing, who controls much of the affordable housing money in the state, just puts no priority on age-restricted housing, so there's no money to build it. Now, will there be in 5 or 10 years? Possibly. But, you know, the Narragansett Affordable Housing Corporation, I guess, wants to move on and just, you know, sell it, so.
So we're really going to change the restrictions now for something that may happen 10 years from now or not? What is it? Or am I missing something here?
There's no financing for age-restricted housing now. There may be financing for it later. So it's a question of, there's interest in the parcel now for family rental housing. I guess the question to you is, do you, and there's funding for it, do you share that belief that there is a need for family housing in town, and you want this 3-unit approval to go for family housing, or would you prefer it stayed at age restricted? It's really that. So.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mengermish?
Let me continue to fume at what the Narragansett Affordable Housing Corporation has done to this community. It has violated everything. Where is our $175,000 that we poured into it for the Boone Street thing? How about all the federal auditors who come here and say this is a poorly run organization? It is time we ended anything to do with the Narragansett affordable housing thing. I believe it's corrupt. And I want the $175,000 we took against, so it's only Glenna and I that spoke against it, that we took to fool around with Boone Street. I would love to see where that money went on Boone Street. End anything to do with Narragansett affordable housing.
Thank you. Mr. Wojciechowski?
I wasn't going to say anything, but I just can't help it. Zoning. Zoning affects us all here. And the affordable housing has been the violator of our zoning, and that has hurt all of us. You don't see it immediately, but as time goes on and we pack these buildings in under the auspices of affordable housing, we violated our zoning and we hurt every resident in this town. Every resident has lost value as this town has gone to these projects. Thank you.
Mr. DeLuca, Mr. Gopian brought up a good point. Has this been reviewed by either the zoning board or planning board, or has it just come to us, just out of curiosity?
It has come to you directly. The planning board, as you know, issued the comprehensive permit in year 2007, but they have not had this on their agenda.
So should they?
I think that would be your prerogative as a body. I believe they may be interested.
No, I think that's a good
Jeff would like
recommendation.
It's a straight governance issue. I think
Yeah,
they
so
have.
I think that's a good idea.
Jeff would like to add a point.
I was asked to buy a 3-unit approval. If I go to the planning board, if I'm smart, I'm bringing my attorney with me. So that's an expense. There's a deed restriction on the property. If you're interested in pursuing removing the deed restriction, fine. If you're not, fine. But I don't want to spend a lot of money pursuing something you may not want to do. So I'm asking for an indication of, where do you want to see this thing go?
Listen, we're not experts. We take recommendations from people who are experts, and that's why we have a planning board in place, right? So again, I think we could give an uninformed opinion, but I'd want people who have access to the comprehensive plan, who understand similar decisions and the implications of them, to come to me with a informed recommendation rather than me guessing what might be the best.
Okay.
And I agree with Glenna. I feel the same way.
As well. I support it, but I'd rather have it vetted out.
Should we refer to the planning board, or how do you prefer to proceed? I mean, we don't wanna
We
kill them.
I have a meeting tomorrow night with the planning board, so it obviously can't be an action item for that night, but I could easily put it on the next meeting that we have, if that is your wish.
Sounds good. Yeah, I
Makes
think that's
sense.
a good idea.
Let's make a motion, refer to the planning board for future consideration.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Number 11, a motion to establish an ad hoc working group on a Narragansett Town Beach Sustainability Work Group.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Mr. Lynch.
Good evening, Dennis Lynch, Central Street.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here as chairman of the Narragansett Conservation Commission. So the Narragansett Conservation Commission has a mandate to continually pursue preserving and restoring natural resources, and certainly we think of the Narragansett Town Beach as such a resource. And we've also been working collectively with the Recreation Advisory Department, which clearly has the day-to-day operations and longer strategic plan for the beach in its purview as well. So, and we've both sort of concluded that the town beach is, it's one of the reasons the town is here. So when you look at the hotels that were built back in the 1880s and when the town was first chartered, there was always the Narragansett Town Beach as its centerpiece. And everyone, we've talked about it at the council and in town, and have tried to make decisions on what to do with the beach, what buildings should be on the beach, which buildings should not be on the beach, how they're constructed, what happens with the parking lots, what volume of people we want on the beach. And to make a lot of those decisions, it would be really helpful to have a long-term point of view of what our beach would look like 20, 30, 40 years from now. I think everyone who goes on the beach understands that it is under a great deal of pressure. And you may remember the catamarans that were parked down the southern end of the beach at one time, and then there was beach in front of them. There is almost no southern tip of the beach there now. And there are cutoff points as one walks the shoreline when one tries to go somewhere at high tide. So there's erosion going on. There's a lot of pressure on the beach through a bunch of environmental sources. And we are looking to form a working group between the the 2 citizen committees, as well as other concerned citizens, to try to bring back an informed point of view about what, if anything, could be done to keep the town beach for our future generations, as it has been here for us and generations before us. So we know this is not an idea that we just came up with. No one else has ever worked on this before. When I talk to people that have been around the town for a while, I think right after Hurricane Carol in 1954, there were a number of initiatives of how to protect the beach. And there were proposed jetties, and there's still pictures and drawings of these somewhere in the innards of this town hall that describes initiatives that could be undertaken at the time. Of course, we did something else. We raised the town center and put up some other urban renewal there, but it's been on people's minds ever since at least 60 years ago. And much more recently, there's been work done by the town council. There was a study commissioned by the town council, by the Woods Hole Group in 2011, and a presentation made to the town. There were other presentations a year before that made by Dr. King and Dr. Boothroyd from URI that are expert in coastal resilience, that had points of view on what was happening in the town beach. So there's a lot of information out there, and it's our intention to collect that information and augment it with the most current information available to help bring back recommendations as to what we could do with the town beach. So it's really looking for sort of a tacit approval that we form this work group, that it be composed of, as you know in the write-up, 2 or 3 members from the Conservation Commission, 2 or 3 members from the Recreation Advisory Board, some specialists that we're fortunate to have in the area, and potentially some other concerned citizens. We want to refine the objective of how we can preserve the town beach long-term. We want to accumulate all the necessary information. We want to call on other communities as well, because certainly this is not a unique discussion that's going on just in Narragansett. It's going on throughout Rhode Island. It's going on up and down the eastern seaboard. So we'd like to take advantage of other works and other initiatives that are going on. And so this is a process that would move along from discovery into starting to shape points of view. It would be inclusive in that we would invite interested participants from the town as we started shaping a point of view to formulate a consensus that we could bring back for consideration to the town council. Have no idea what that recommendation would be. Could be that we come back and say, there's absolutely nothing we can do. The town beach will be moving up the road, whatever we do. Or there could be a number of concrete steps that we could take. Some of them might be minor, some of them might be massive. To the extent they're massive, we would want to explore what other funding options and what other funds would be available through a whole range of state and national organizations that could help us. So I've talked to a number of department heads, to Pam about it. Steve Wright has been gracious enough to become our liaison from the town as a department head that would help facilitate this process going forward. And I think it's probably a 6 to 12 month project. And when the project is completed, hopefully there can be action steps that are taken. Hopefully there can be a chapter that can get placed in the comprehensive plan, because now the town comprehensive plan is very, very terse on what's the long-term prospects for the beach and what, if anything, we could do. So we would like to create something that's thoughtful enough that could go long-term in the comprehensive plan. And Steve, in the Recreation Department, is also building a long-term strategic plan for the operations of the beach, and we think these findings would be helpful in that. So that's kind of the long and the short of it. I mean, I guess one last note is, what we've already discovered is we can't talk about just the part of the beach that we own. We have to talk about the Narragansett beach if we come back with any recommendations for sustainability, because condo owners, Dunes Club, it's one geological piece of land that you can't make changes to one part and not make them sort of comprehensively. So we would need to engage those people as stakeholders as well. So probably we intend to meet once a month, and we'd look forward to sort of a head nod from the council that this is a worthwhile activity to undertake by citizens, and we would launch.
I think it's
Happy to answer any
great.
Yeah,
questions.
I think
it's
besides our pension financial, that's the most important issue we have in town, really, for long-term success, sustainability. I really haven't addressed it as much as we should have in this term, quite frankly. So kudos to Mr. Lynch for taking the initiative.
Thank you. Can you also maybe, this beach focus, but what about, like, kind of, I know a lot of the sand has gone down into the river, and can we, is that part of your discussion, is maybe kind of bringing some of that, I know people have talked about that, and getting permits, the permitting process for kind of, the river's getting very shallow.
Right, so that would be when our first step is to refine the objectives, to refine and prioritize the objectives, and the beach does blend into the mouth of the river, and even the Woods Hole group, talked about all the sand at the mouth of the river, and I've heard estimates between some, few thousand cubic yards or millions of cubic yards, and from people that really know this stuff. So I think, Matt, we would like to see how comprehensive we can be without trying to use a bad pun, boil the ocean, because we would like to not take on too much, but to the extent that's part of the solution, that might be absolutely a part that would get wound into it.
Dennis, as far as people on the committee, what was your idea about the composition of the group?
It's 2 or 3 members from the Conservation Commission, 2 or 3 members from the Rec Advisory Board, a couple of beach sustainability specialists that we have in the area, and perhaps 1 or 2 other concerned citizens that believe they have the time and the interest and the appetite to put in some work. The ad hoc committee will probably need to do more work on its own, and we would rely on the town for some, but I think there's tasks and activities that the citizens have to undertake themselves. So I'm asking everyone who volunteers to understand it's more than a 90-minute meeting a month.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Alba?
Well, as I said in the past, perhaps building a pier would be ideal, like there's a breakwater, and I think, I wonder if you ever thought of that, because once I mentioned it, somebody else said the same thing, that it would act as a breakwater so that the surf won't be as high, and that would be a lot less erosion going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Traeger?
Well, this is a very interesting issue that I'm just remembered quite some time ago. I took a flight with Mr. Boothroyd over the coastline of the Matunic, all the way from Quonset all the way down the bay, and I still can remember some of the things he said. And it's mega tons of sand move around every single year. Nobody knows where they're going to go 100%. It all depends on nature. And I haven't heard one person speak of what is being talked about, and I know everybody understands it, but nobody seems to want to, I guess we don't want to really face it. We have a situation with global warming, and we might not have a beach in Narragansett in a few years. One of the things that I remember, Mr. Boothroyd, and I mean, he's got to speak for himself. You ought to have him come. I saw him the other day. He's around. You might not like what he tells you, though, because I think what he'll probably tell you is you cannot stop that ocean. There's no stop, especially in this particular locality. We talked about it in Jerusalem many years ago, probably 25, 30 years ago, about possibly putting some breakwaters out like they did inside the breakwater of the Harbor Refuge, that particular beach. And it probably works. It does block the sand. It holds the sand a little bit. But we're talking about the exposure here on this side is you're on the ocean, and You guys go, everybody goes down there. You see how it changes from one day to the next? A few days ago, it was, the waves were 10 feet tall, and they were smashing. You don't stop it, and I've noticed a tide increase at Skipstock of 8 inches since I've had it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 12, motion to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 74 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Traffic and Vehicles, and a motion to read, introduce, pass, and accept as a first reading a resolution amending the official list of parking restrictions and regulations in the Town of Narragansett in accordance with the Narragansett Code of Ordinances.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Could I just give a brief overview, James, since I wasn't
Please.
here the first time it hit the agenda, and that caused a lot of confusion, I think. Councilman McLaughlin made a request much earlier this year to impose tow zones in certain areas of the town. That did end up with the chief reviewing with the manager and then myself. And as a result, there's a letter that's now in the agenda I sent in January, which indicated that I had a concern relative to whether the ordinances as they existed then specifically gave the council the authority to impose tow zones by resolution. Because years ago, we created an ordinance that lets you do parking restrictions by resolution. The only ordinance on the books as of today, and as of last January when I read it, had a provision for the chief to tow vehicles if it's a public emergency. So my concern was there was not an ordinance saying we could impose tow zones, even though we'd put it in resolutions, and there was one in Eastward Look, there's one in a couple others. So I raised the issue of let's amend the ordinance to provide specifically the council can, as part of the resolution process, impose tow zones. And that's what this ordinance amendment before you would do, would be to legitimatize what's been put in a number of different parking resolutions. I think it's needed just to protect against challenges, and we get challenges on these parking restrictions all the time. The second piece, which is unrelated to what Mr. McLaughlin asked for, but has confused the issue as well, is that when the review of the existing Eastward Look resolution took place and I identified the tow zone issue, the chief and Ann also identified that there was a parking permit issue in there that had never been implemented. Not something I was concerned about or charged with looking at, but at the same time, that could put on the agenda to remove that provision as well. Hence the confusion. I wasn't here to answer the questions, and it got tabled till we could put it on the agenda when I was here. So the purposes of tonight's request are, one, have a first reading on the ordinance that would clearly give the council the authority to impose tow zones by parking restrictions adopted by resolution. That's what this ordinance does if you pass it tonight and then pass it again in 2 weeks. The second piece is to remove a permitting section or a resident permitting section that's never been used, but is there in existence for years from the Eastward Look parking resolution. That's the summary of what exists tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Sometime around December, I requested the tow zone signs to be placed in Eastwood Look and I forgot the name of the highway now, Village of Point Judith. And in addition to that, I also requested that we post tow zone signs in the Port of Galilee in particular. And this is on one of my agenda items, one of the 4 agenda items I requested. It's in the back, and I'll remove it with the consent of the council, if you just let me speak on it now. I've been waiting since December for this tow zone signs to be placed up. And for some unexplained reason to me, and I can't understand why do I have to wait, and why do the citizens of Eastwood Look and those other communities have to wait for our department to put up tow zone signs? I just don't understand it. What do I have to do, beg for it?
Let's just try a request.
There's signs going up for every other thing going around in town, even for some of the private organizations advertising some of their events. So we can't deal with our own issues first? We need this. We need it in Galilee because people park their cars there on the escape road sometimes for 2-3 weeks at a time and go to Block Island, come back, and they have a $30 parking tag, overtime parking tag on their car. It affects the businesses in Galilee. They're taking up space, and it's just plain not fair. I think that the police need that power to tow a vehicle after tagging it. They should have that option to tow that car out of there. Same is true in Eastwood Look. Last weekend I was over there was over 60 cars in violation alone. One parked right in front of a fire hydrant, left wheel to the curb in front of the fire hydrant. What good does it do to go just put a tag on that car? That car needs to be tagged and towed. So those are the kind of issues that I think are very, very important here, and I'd like to see, I'm in favor of this ordinance change, and I think it's a valuable tool for our police department in the upcoming summer and fall in the business of enforcing the laws and regulations, parking regulations in Galilee, and in particular those student housing developments, if you will. Thanks.
Doug, I agree. I just have a question for Mark. Are some of them state roads and some of them are town roads? Is that the delay in the signage?
We're only focusing, the purpose of this ordinance will deal with town roads. State roads is a different regulatory issue we have to go through. And so this would deal with Eastwood Look, Village of Point Judith, Galilee on the town controlled roads, or where the state has consented to the town regulating the parking requirements.
Okay, thanks.
I think the towing, we talked about it last meeting, I think the towing is going to make a big difference over there. I'm confused as to what's Doug asking about. Doug is asking about we had the ordinance, but we weren't enforcing it, or because you said it was by resolution we could add, so we had like enabling language to allow resolutions.
The history of parking restrictions in this town are, years ago, the town council adopted an ordinance saying we no longer need to adopt parking restrictions by ordinance, we can do that by resolution, and it has to have 2 readings. And historically, we've added in some cases, not all, a tow zone provision, which Doug is correct, was never enforced. Doug made the request in December that the signs go up and it be enforced. It got to me in January. I wrote the letter that you have in the agenda saying I think we need to change the ordinance to make sure we clearly have the authority to tow these vehicles. Hence, I did the ordinance in January. So it's now, if you adopt the ordinance, clearly you have the authority to tow the vehicles that the resolution says are parked illegally and can be towed. I'm just making sure the enabling authority exists. The gap was, when this hit the agenda in February, I wasn't here, and my cover letter was not included in the agenda package. So there was confusion as to what I was intending to do when I met with the manager and dean and conveyed back the way I think it should be handled.
So basically, it was kind of like it had been continued indefinitely.
It was just tabled.
That was the practical effect.
It was tabled, and I spoke to Pam a month or so ago about getting back on, to clear it up. I sent you guys a letter under cover about my concerns on the legality issues. I think was a separate cover, and then also making sure we do this the correct way.
So then we couldn't have put up signs, though, because we didn't have an ordinance.
We didn't have we had a questionably enforceable resolution.
Right, so we need to have both, right? We need the ordinance and then put up the signs and make it clear in Eastwood Look that when people, that it's going to be enforced, that the phone number's out there, that the town can tow, and residents of Eastwood Look also should be able, if someone's parking on their property, to call that same tow number. That's what I think.
It'd be police enforcement. I'm sorry.
They still have some tow zone signs in Eastwood Look. There are a couple of signs the students didn't get, I guess, on a couple of the intersections there. So
once adopted, it'll be enforced. I'm just trying to make sure we cover the bases and do it correctly. So it should happen in 2 weeks. I know it's late, but it's unfortunately I wasn't here in February when it came up.
Well, I don't have any fault with your office at all, Mark. You responded very quickly. You defined it right up front. It's just I couldn't get the signs. Can't get the signs put up.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Number 13, a motion to discuss raising the rental registration fee to provide resources for public safety personnel response for the town of Narragansett.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Discussion, I asked that this be put in the agenda because of the events of a few weeks ago. I think over time, we've done a lot to try to ramp down student behavior, and I think those policies have been tremendous ideas, especially the sticker policy, because it's been copied by other communities, including Providence, but simply it hasn't had the desired effect that we needed. A few weeks ago, I think Green Lane was the Rubicon, and we've passed it. To sit up here and think that the status quo is appropriate would be kind of foolish. And that's kind of how I felt last week or 2 weeks ago when Mr. Santos, Mr. Ferrandi, Ms. Stewart, Ms. Alberg, Mr. Gilchrist, and Ms. Ryan, and many others stood here and told their stories about their experience, not only on May 3rd, but also this year and the previous years. I think we have to give our public safety personnel every resource we can to enforce the ordinances and the toll policies and everything else we have on the books. Whether it's new shifts, overtime, extra details, whatever it takes, I think the message that this unruly behavior will not and cannot be tolerated. A few weeks ago, there was a party in a street that I lived on. I heard it. There was a lot of yelling. There was some screaming. There was some cars going back and forth. I didn't call the police because it wasn't a crazy party, but it was loud. I mean, I figured the police had better things to do, and they do. But of course, the next morning, I wake up and my neighbor's back windshield of her car was smashed in from a rock that a kid had thrown in. Luckily, Officer McGovern actually did a great job. He chased down the partygoers the next day. He tracked down what house it was. He did a tremendous amount of work. And he actually got the neighbors some money for the window, which I think is great. But I think I should have called that night. If the police had gone by, if they had stopped in, maybe that wouldn't have happened. It would have been a better situation. I think just letting students, anyone, partygoers run wild, we just can't let it happen anymore. It has to stop. I think that some of the population in our town treats this neighborhood and our neighborhoods, all neighborhoods across the town, as adult playgrounds. And they're ruining the quality of life for the people who live there, who make up the backbone of our community. And we're losing that in a lot of respects. And I don't think Chief Hoxie has asked for this. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to ask for more help. But I think by providing more resources through an increase in fees would ramp up party patrols and help public safety every weekend from September to May and through the summer. And the proposal, I'm not sure what's the best number. I think a $50 increase would raise approximately $150,000. A $25 increase would raise $75,000. A $10 increase would raise $30,000. All of that could be going towards a detailed and directed, pointed enforcement campaign. No more littering, no more speeding, no more public intoxication, no more open containers. The message has to be sent that we can't let this stuff continue. And for some reason, some of the people who live in town think that's appropriate, and it just isn't. So I think each of these steps, including Mr. McLaughlin's toll policy, plus these things, if they're enforced, would be small steps towards a safer community with a higher quality of life for everyone. And it's probably not the easiest thing to take for some landowners, landlords, but considering the amount of money that some of these people get for the houses they rent per room, it's a nominal, minimal sum, and I think can be used towards a great thing. Even, as Ms. Stewart has said in the past, there are trainings for police to control parties. I think the riot on May 3rd was an exception, but you know what? It happened last year too. Not to the extent it did this year, but it happened last year. We have to be ready for these things and move forward and make changes. And this is one thing we haven't done, I don't think, to the extent we could. So that's my proposal. Mr. Haynes.
I want to agree with everything you said, with one exception. You said that a $10 increase would raise $30,000. So that's 3,000 rentals.
Right.
Chief, how many problem houses are there in town? 300? 10%. So what you're saying is to the other 2,700 people who maintain their houses, like Mrs. Stewart said, are responsible landlords, we're going to fine you another $50 to police what other people can't. That's totally unfair to the other 2,700 who are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Then what is the point of the rental registration in the first place?
$50 is what it is. I mean, you know, I wasn't in favor of the $50, but that's what it is, so everybody said agree.
So you just want to let
So
everybody...
all you're doing now is you're putting more of an increase to people who rent. Like I rent to a family.
And you can't afford the $10? Or the 25?
That's not the point, James.
It is the point. It is the point.
It isn't the point.
If you want to let this run
I'm not
wild,
here to
if you
argue
want
with you.
to,
I'm
if you want to
simply
let,
here to
if you want to let
express-
this run wild, go for it. That's your choice.
I'm here to simply express the opinion I think it's going to be a lot of the landlords. You keep raising rents, you keep raising fees on the good people. Eventually, they're going to have to look, say, okay, I give up. Let's rent to students. Let's just, you know, they can't absorb all the fees. You can say $10, then it's going to be $100, then it's going to be $150. You know, have some respect for the people who do the right thing.
If the people in town who are causing the trouble, the respect for the rest of the residents, that'd be a good argument.
Then don't blame the other 2,700 for 300. That's all.
Ms. Stewart?
Thank you, Council President Callahan. It's nice to hear words that make sense over the past 15 or 20 years. You're standing up and you're making a statement and a commitment, and we thank you for that. Let's not take 300 from that gentleman and extrapolate, because perhaps the police chief was talking about, I don't know, the number of times they responded to something. That doesn't count the number of phone calls of complaints of issues. That's an entirely different number, because complaints are not listed in the statistics with incident reports. Let me tell you, the number of complaints over the years have been overwhelming. By the time the police get there, sometimes they're dispersed. They run through the backyards. They disappear. They run through the woods. They run through my backyard. They hide in the shrubs, and the police can't find them, and so there's nothing written up. The number of actual complaints is a lot higher than 300. And when you talk about rental registration and the fees, that also has to go to the personnel in the building inspector's office, and the statistics and data and the databases could really be upgraded. The rental registration form could be upgraded to be more complete. Sometimes I've had people in my neighborhood, plus myself, go and ask, is there a rental agent or someone managing that property? Because the people are, you know, there's nothing that we don't know who to call, or we don't have the information. And we're told, oh, that's a state law. They don't have to have anyone put that on the local form, who's managing the property. That's not true. It's got to be, it's a state law for an out-of-state landlord to have someone managing their property who lives in state. But that information also has to be on the registration form for local people who rent. So we need maybe some more computerized information that's readily available on the rental registration forms, and that fee, that increased fee, could go towards the personnel in the building inspector's office, who's also responsible for going out and finding the numerous houses that are never registered, but we know they're renting. You can tell by the number of houses parked across the lawn. So thank you for your efforts.
Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree with Carol, and I thank you too. Because I think it's, landlords are making big money here, and there's no reason why they shouldn't put up a little more money. And I think if some of the landlords feel alienated because they're running a good, clean house, and maybe they'll get after the other bad landlords and maybe we'll get something done. This town is really going downhill. I've been here since 1932, and I can tell you, it's slipping. And the problem is the families are leaving and the students are coming in. Don't get me wrong, we're always going to have the students here. I just read about the graduations at URI. I'm a URI fan. But it's going to be more and more, but you got to draw the line. As Dr. Mazie said, you draw the line and you don't let the students pass it, and you got to enlist the landlords as allies.
Thank you. Mr. Wojciechowski.
I think the orange sticker is where we got to focus. We got to focus on the orange sticker. The orange sticker alerts us to the people who are causing the problem, the occupants of the home. The occupants of the home, when they get their orange sticker, then they must deal with a $2,000 administration fee for that sticker. That's what we ought to do. So now we have a $2,000 fee times 300. That's $600,000 we have. Let's have $600,000. And we get that with the administration fee on an orange sticker. It is targeting the offender. The offender, whether he's a student. In fact, the last meeting, a gal came to me, she says, I have more trouble with the summer rentals. They're only here for a week or two, so they go wild. They know they can get away with it. So the summer rentals that sometimes are even worse than the student rentals. And the only way to get at this is the orange sticker. And to reinforce that, we had this big organization come up with rental registration. Obviously, it has failed because we're here today again. That rental registration is a big failure. It hasn't done it. We haven't fixed the problem. In fact, I say it caused a problem because the students know that you're going to go after the landlord more than them in many cases. We can party and get out of here, especially the last day. Let's party and get out of here. The landlord's going to take the hit. Now, if we had the orange sticker thing where you nail a student or you nail the occupants, there's a different story. But if they think that they can get the blame put on someone else, they're going to go for that. They're going to go for the next riot. We're going to have another riot because it's the landlord's fault. Let's have a... In fact, many students end up not liking the landlord. For one reason or another, there's always some problem, especially the rowdy ones that cause problems, cause the landlord to get out there 1 o'clock in the morning. Those students don't like the landlord. They'd love that landlord to get fined, especially after they're leaving the last time. And let me tell you, most of the rentals are not students. Most of our rentals are not students. My rental, 72-year-old man, retired. He's in rehab now, he's coming back. A young family, 3 children. They're trying to buy a home, and they're renting for 2 years trying to buy a home. 55-year-old CNA can hardly afford it. I'm going to have to evict her because if I raise it another $10, she's out. She can't. Most of my rentals are not students. Okay, not students. So now you're taking a small and relatively small, difficult student, and you're fining everyone, and you're charging everyone. Absolutely, absolutely wrong. We just need to change our focus here. Leases, you make a lease, and I got a 5-page lease. I got rules and regulations, and yeah, it helps somewhat. It helps somewhat. However, try to enforce those. Try to say you can't have a party after 11 o'clock. Try to enforce that. I went down there one time, and luckily I had the police following me because I was ready to get assaulted by about 30 people. And I was standing there, and I was going to hold my own. I was in the service. I can hold my own. I don't care how many there are, okay? But I wish I had a weapon with me at that time because I needed it. And luckily the police showed up, and I opened the door for them because nobody else would have. So I don't know how a landlord is going to deal with a rowdy party or try. and you try to evict, you can't even evict them for non-payment. Take you 2 or 3 months. The landlord gives me the legal right to go down there and throw them out. Okay, you want the landlord responsible. Now give me the tools so that when they violate my lease law, which says everything stops at 11, and they don't park on a lawn, that I can come to your municipal court and evict them next week. Give me that right. If you can give me that right, then you can say it's my fault. But I don't have that right. I don't have that authority over those kids and those drunks to do that. You don't give me that right.
Mr. Wojciechowski, your time's up.
You can't hold me responsible unless you give me the tools. So let's stop rental registration and let's focus on orange sticker. We'll get more money.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Alberg.
Stanley has a different situation because he's an in-town landlord. We have 19 houses. None of them live around here. New York, Colorado, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, you name it, there are none of them here. And I was told last week, it took me 4 phone calls to try and find out. We've had a tree down in the next yard and the garbage collects since October. And now they were starting to move it, but it's still attached to the tree, a huge branch, because the lawnmen are coming in. So I went to the town to try and find out who is in charge, because I get just tired since '86. And I was told, we don't have to do that anymore, it's the state. So it took me 3 phone calls. I finally got someone who gave me the name of the person who was in charge. Haven't seen him all year, never did anything with the bush. And they said they had the same information upstairs. And I kept going upstairs, downstairs, upstairs, downstairs. And I was away last Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday I came home, the branch is gone. But those are in town, they can have it, do something. But we've got all out of state, and they don't care. They're just collecting the money, and they show you the big holes they got in their house, but they don't care. $27,000 a year for 9 months. That's a good profit. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch.
So I've been coming to town council meetings recently, and we're spending an extraordinary amount of time on the rental situation and the students here. And I think that's because we are very, very different than any of the other towns. Like if you go to the town council meetings in other Washington County towns, and you go to Exeter or Westerly or Charleston or Hope Valley, I don't believe any of these discussions are going on, because I don't think anyone has the extraordinary ratio that we do between rentals and residences. So 30% of our residences are rentals. And since we're not using facts tonight, let me say that I think that between 60 and 70% of them are student rentals, or 9-3 rentals as we used to talk about them. That could be a very, when you think about the thousands of students that rent in our campus, that could easily be the number. And I think you're taking a workable approach going down the line. No one of these items is a solution in itself. But I think with the towing, I think with the increased fines, I think landlords have to become involved. It's big, big business for, let's say, 60 to 70% of the landlords. And the $50, although it's a little bit blunt force, and you could argue that there is a landlord or 2 or more that is being, should not be receiving the full $50. If the council can commit that all of those incremental dollars really go into enforcement capabilities, I think that's a really good first step. And perhaps next year we'll get much more sophisticated about the database, and you can charge between the people that are doing this as a real going business versus the people that are renting to year-round. And we know about the year-round landlords versus the 9-3s that generate these extraordinary annual amounts. So in favor of the 50, let's put it to work.
We've got a very different problem here than other towns. We can't think of this as just landlords. We have to think of it in the context of being next door to the university. So I certainly would support it.
Thank you. Any suggestions?
I mean, I was torn, but I really think that the increase I could support for sure for the motion tonight. I could support it.
I can, too.
Absolutely.
Anyone want have a suggestion on the amount? I mean, I just pulled those numbers based on the number of rentals that were registered, so.
So somebody that does the registration rentals, are they here? Anybody? Is it come out of Tony's office? So,
Actually, it's Laura's office.
It's in
It's our
finance,
finance director's office, rental registration.
and how's that going, Laura? How's that going?
I actually think there are a couple of issues with the rental registration and how it's being administered. So maybe if the council would recommend just to send it back to staff in-house for a recommendation, we'll address it and bring it back to you.
And they're not due until,
October,
right, so they go out in October and they're due on the 1st of the year?
yes.
So we have some time to work with?
Yes.
I think that's a good idea.
Agree.
enough. All right, so,
We're continuing it then?
yeah, continue it till the
She's
report's
going to
back?
study it. Yeah, they're going to look at it in-house.
Well, it was just a motion to discuss.
It was,
so-
yeah.
Yeah,
wasn't
motion,
it?
just a motion to discuss anyway, it's not
Oh.
an official still. Should we vote on it, or?
Yeah, could you actually refer it to staff to report back with a recommendation? That would make some sense, and then we close the loop on it, too.
All right. Motion refer back to staff for report to the town council at a future date.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 14, a motion to reconsider the vote taken on October 7th, 2013, agenda item 16, which denied the approval of the purchase of a prefabricated restroom facility for the George C. Playfield from CXT, Inc.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
I asked Mr. Wright or the council to put this back on the agenda based on the reports Mr. Wright gave to the Recreation Advisory Board a few weeks back, explaining the whole process he went through, the fabricated building versus the reconstruction or rehab of the current building. Mr. Wright, do you want to explain the situation?
Actually, don't you want to just do the reconsider
Yeah,
first?
can we-
and then-
Yeah,
Yeah.
do that first, okay.
You procedurally, you do need to vote to reconsider, then you can open it up to change your vote if you so choose.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 15, a motion to approve the purchase of a prefabricated restroom facility for the George C. Playfield from CXT, Inc. in the amount of $49,966.97.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Discussion, Mr. Wright.
Good evening again, and thank you for revisiting this. Well, as I stated back in October, the George C. Restroom building, since I got here back in 2011, that building, that block building has been let go and had not been used for several years. We took a look at it, and what we did was we went out and between the engineering office and myself, looked at a couple of different scenarios, and what we came up with a prefabricated restroom from CXT in the amount of $49,966.97. At the request of the town council, we also had the truss contractor, and they took a look at it over the winter months. And let me just make sure I have my numbers correct here. CNL Builders took a look at the same building, the block building, and they used the same specifications as the prefabricated building, and their price came out at $61,539. So what we're recommending is to go back to the prefabricated specifications with CXT building, and we can have that done hopefully by the end of the summer. It is a prefab concrete building with a men's and ladies' restroom, Right now, we're using a porta-john, and we've been using a porta-john every single summer. We've been getting a lot of complaints from the residents at George C. It's a very popular park, and I think it's definitely the way to go. It's vandal-proof, and they use it in Newport. There's 2 buildings in Newport. It's my recommendation we go with this CXT building.
What's the difference in price between this one and the original proposal?
The original proposal was $50,010, and the price that we have now is $49,966. That is not without the site work. We're estimating another $7,000 or $8,000 for site work.
So there's no change from the initial proposal you had? I thought you had a concession attached to the first one.
We eliminated the concession because it was a unisex restroom with a concession, which would provide storage space, but now we're just going with a men's and ladies' room.
So you're saying that it's going to cost $7,000 for the site preparation?
Approximately, yeah. And that would be done with our local contractors that are on contract with the town and with our own resources. We would also take down the existing building with our in-house staff.
Well, just a little bit of history for anybody that's interested in it. That building, the existing building, is a cement block building that's been abandoned for 10 years. The town just ignored it and let it progress into the condition it's in now, so it's almost unusable, I guess. Initially, I opposed this expenditure thinking that we could fix it, but I guess the numbers are too close, so I can't object to it anymore. It just makes more sense to do what Mr. Wright has, but it's a shame that it's not your responsibility, it was before you, that they allowed this building to go like that, number one. And number two, there was a time where the recreation department had men and equipment, lumber, apparently, the way I understand it, ready to rehab that whole building. And the director at the time told them to stop the project, and they've been using porta potties down there for the last 10 years. Am I correct in saying that?
That's correct, and I totally agree with you.
And it's a total waste of taxpayers' money, the way they took care of that property, and that's what I found so offensive when I first opposed the building of this new project.
And I totally agree with you. Deferred maintenance is one thing that, since I've been here, I've been trying to take an inventory of our existing buildings and trying to put yearly repetitive maintenance into our facilities to try to bring them back. And as long as I'm here and we can have materials on hand and have people that are responsible and having people have the disciplines and background to be able to do that in staff without having to hire contractors, we can do this repetitive maintenance and not let these buildings get to this condition, because again, this building is at a condition where we can't renovate it, and we're going to end up with a block building with a pitched roof, and it's going to get back in the same condition. And it's my recommendation, don't go with that.
Steve, can I just add, Park and Rec, the board, they approved it, they wanted that, right?
And the next thing is, yes, at your request, we did go back to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. We vetted that through that panel, and they're in full in agreement with that, exactly.
Great. So 2 other questions. Usage, I mean, is it locked down or is it open for the public? I mean, how does it work? Is it?
Well, our recommendation is all of our restrooms have automatic locking systems on it. So this time of year, they're programmed to open up at 7:30 in the morning, and they lock down right after the leagues use them. So we program them, and then they have an override. So if they're special use, they're overrideable. But they basically lock down 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And then and our staff cleans them every single day, 7 days a week, year-round.
And one last question, you said about vandalism. So the material that it's made, I mean, it can't be.
It's a marine grade. Well, nothing is vandal-proof, but it's a concrete building, concrete roof. They use them over in Newport. They use them all over the country, and the only vandalism that they do get would be graffiti, which we can paint. But I mean, as far as marine grade, very high resistance stainless steel material. As far as they're concerned over in Newport, they're extremely happy with them. Not only did I talk to the director, I talked to the maintenance staff over there. They've used them for many years over there, extremely happy with the building.
Thank you. I can support this as well.
Thank you.
Steve, when it came up before, one thing that you and I talked about, I'd encourage, what the rec committee had looked at it at that time, and just bring some of them forward too, and I encourage people who are on all the boards to come forward to kind of back it up and give us more information, because after the vote, I actually went and toured it to see, and, you know, my memory of it was that George C., where I played tennis there long ago, was that there were bathrooms, but it's not. So people reinforcing that, coming from the rec committee, telling us it's unusable, and it is. I can tell everyone it is, so we need to have bathrooms there. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lima.
Good evening.
Evening.
Richard Lima, Mumford Road. I'm speaking on behalf of, I am on the rec board, but I'm speaking as a taxpayer, and I had a citizen's petition with 60 people who live in that area who are in favor of having this facility, you know, restructured, and would hope that you would take their signatures as well into consideration for this long overdue facility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Number 16, a motion to award the bid for food concession at the Cristofaro Park for the Parks and Recreation Department to the highest bidder, Narragansett Grill, at their annual quoted payments for a 3-year period.
I'll move that motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 17, a motion to authorize the town manager to implement a policy that outlines the acceptable uses and expectations for vehicles utilized or assigned to town employees.
I'll move that motion.
Second?
Discussion? Ms. Nolan?
Yes, this is just the first of many policies I'll be putting before you. And we need to update, restore, bring into existence quite a few policies, administrative policies. This is just the first. It's something that in course of doing business, we discovered that we need. And I've worked with Human Resources, and Chief Hoxie and myself worked on this one. It's something we need, and I think Mark has vetted it, our town solicitor, and like I said, it's needed, and I hope you'll approve it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion
Thank you.
carries 5-0. Number 18, a motion to instruct town staff to perform much-needed repairs to Colonel John Gardner Road immediately, whether via the Community Development Block Grant CDBG program or via FEMA reimbursement process or via town funds.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Mr. Mannix?
So the history here is this is a Little Beach area of Bonnet Shores, and there was some damage to it in Hurricane Irene, but then in Hurricane Sandy there was significant damage, and it's a stretch that goes along, again, the Little Beach area and Colonel John Gardner Road. And so many people in the fire district, you know, want it to be repaired, but we know that we have to get the town beach open, you know, after the hurricane occurred for 2013. So I counsel patience to many people in Bonnet. You know, obviously the priority for the town is to get the town beach and things going in the pier. But then on July 1st, 2013, we as the council voted to authorize the project to go forward. But then on August 15th, 2013, it was part of the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is very good because then the money comes, if it was done from the July vote, it's a 75%, 25% situation with the FEMA reimbursement. Under the Block Development Program, it's 100% done from the federal program. So that's great for all taxpayers, right, for the town, however, it still has not been done. So that vote was done in August, so I just felt like I had to put this on because people have waited, orange barrels, one whole summer. You know, the road is one lane, and people are just really frustrated, and I just want it to be clear that for this summer that we just get it done for something from Sandy. I don't know what else is outstanding from Sandy. There's not much, so that's why I said, however it's funded, it needs to be done immediately, and we can define immediately, but Pam might have some information too, so.
No, just today we
Matt,
received...
is this the road where Senator Whitehouse and you and I were at? Is that the same
Yes.
section? Half
Yes.
that whole road's gone, huh?
Yeah, you were there.
Yeah.
So
As it
that
goes
was
up the
quite
hill
long
around-
ago, we were there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, last summer.
Right. So that's why I put it on, Doug. It's just
Okay.
very, yeah.
No, I didn't know when you
It's,
said
that's
the-
exactly it,
You
yeah.
said the beach, I was a little confused. All right.
And it's
I'm
just,
sorry, Pam.
yeah, the application was supposed to go in August. Maybe you have information on that. It's not about that. I just want to get it done at this point.
We received today from Mr. Marchant, who's still here, I asked him to stay for this. We received word that HUD has released the funds for Colonel John Gardner Road. Mr. Marchant, is there anything, or Mr. Cesarine, is there any time frame for us using, and how soon can the town be ready now that the funds have been released? Jeff, do you have any plans on that? We have been waiting for this, and we expected it, but I was very happy to receive it today.
Once we receive the CRMC assent, we'll be able to schedule the work.
That's right.
So we're applying for that? That wasn't done?
That was not done.
Okay.
But that, I will report back to you at the next meeting with the status on that.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And I know Jeff, put in the application, but he, it just, again, it was a slow process. So, so thank you, Jeff. So can we get a commitment that it will, so CRMC, we're waiting for that assent, okay.
That's what we're waiting for now. Yep, but we do have the money.
Great, thanks.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 19, a motion to adopt a resolution establishing the proposed wages for seasonal, part-time, and temporary employees for fiscal year 2014-2015.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Discussion?
Maybe the director could come up and explain the rationale. Because I think this came before us in the past and wasn't well received, so maybe there's a different news on it today.
Good evening again. I put something else in the packet this time to give you a little bit better explanation. I don't think I did a very good job last year when I was doing this. The wages, the parameters, it provides not only myself but other directors with seasonal employees, gives me some flexibility to provide the senior staff in some of these categories a 50-cent wage increase from year to year. And what's really made things difficult is the minimum wage, the $8 minimum wage over the last couple of years. Some of these folks have not had some increases since 2011. So what I did this year was I gave you the beach staff as an example. And the attendance, if you take a look at the attendance, and I had a question from a couple of people. First of all, these folks work 5-hour shifts, so we have 54 attendants. 21 of them work at $8 an hour, 22 at $8.25, 10 at $8.50, and 1 at $8.75. So we have folks that return, for several years in a row, and so what I'm trying to explain to you is that every one in that category, all 54, don't reach that top category. We're not giving them all that high rate. And it's right across the board, including our lifeguards. Our lifeguards are the most senior, are one of the most mature senior staff in the state. And if you go to the lifeguard categories, where we have assistant lifeguard captains, and lifeguards, Dave Cannon, who is the waterfront safety manager, has folks that some of them are in their 30s and 40s that are returning from other parts of the country, come back year after year after year. They haven't received increases since 2011. And again, we're looking to be able to give them a 50-cent increase this year, not $2 or $3 increase, a 50-cent increase. And so again, this provides us some flexibility to retain some of the senior staff from year to year. So again, it's not everyone in that category. It's just, again, it's across the board.
So a part-time job at the beach sounds great. And so is it hard to find, is it hard to find people that want to come to work for the summer? I mean, is that a challenge as a director?
Well, to be honest with you, it's a little bit, this year it's quite challenging. In fact, I have one error that I want to change if this is approved. the restroom category, the restroom attendant at the beach, I have it at 8 to 10:50. It should be 10 to 11. But other than that, I'm having a hard time getting folks to clean the restrooms at the beach. And you know, we actually had 4. We have 2 females and 2 males that were doing an excellent job last year. And they're seeking other employment in the same category in similar towns next door, and they just told us last week. So we're looking for, if you look on our website, we're trying to fill those jobs. We're trying to fill sales office jobs. So we're having a little bit more difficult this year than we have in the last couple of years for whatever reason.
I didn't realize it was all the jobs. I thought it was the lifeguards, because I was like, oh, I thought maybe that increase I could support. I didn't realize it was a full scale until I looked at everybody was going to get an increase. So.
Well, again, remember, everyone doesn't get the increases. This provides us to be able to provide anyone that's been with us for 3, 4, 5 years.
So it's longer.
Yes.
Longer standing employees.
Yes.
Well, they're not huge raises at all. They're part-time workers. 5 hours, I guess you were saying that they
Some are
work.
5, some are 8, some are 29 and not, you know, they don't work 40 hours.
It's a part-time job for them, and I don't think that the rates that they're getting now is unreasonable. And with the economic times we have facing our town now, I'm not going to vote to give them any increases. Really, I think for a part-time job, it's not a bad deal. Maybe you're recruiting, maybe you need to advertise a little more, I don't know, but I can't imagine some kids ever passing up that opportunity for 5 hours a day and for $9 an hour, $8 an hour, with minimum wage, whatever they're making. It's a pretty neat job.
So to Doug's point.
And obviously, because you have the same people coming back.
To Doug's point, what are you doing to recruit? Just curious, because it does, I mean, it's a dream job for some people, right, to work on a beautiful beach. So have you done a lot of work around trying to get?
Well, Susan Healy puts it in the 3 local papers and on our website. So, and we start recruiting all throughout the winter. Usually, we start recruiting around the Christmas break.
The way I view it, I want to give you some discretion, but I think that if the minimum wage is 8, I don't see raising the minimum. Like, if you can get people at the minimum, I mean, that overall, with all the employees that you bring in, you know, and you say some of them are more senior so that you would be able to go up on some of the maximum, because these are a lot of different ranges. Maybe as a compromise, you know, I don't think I want to raise any of the minimums. Like, I just don't. I don't see the rationale behind it, because students, kids who get part-time beach jobs, whether Narragansett, elsewhere in town, they love it. I mean, for the most part. So I think that was what I would say. That way you could go to that. You could go to the minimum wage, or I mean, some of them aren't minimum, but I just wouldn't raise the minimums.
Well, some of them we are keeping at the minimum, but like I'm saying, all this does is provide us the flexibility to be able to.
Right, but Steve, you'd still have it if you could have the minimum below minimum wage, technically, right? You're never going to use it. But I just think, I don't see raising the minimums, because if you could get somebody at the lower, like, why wouldn't you? If you get someone at 8, get them at 8. So I see you need it for those people who are higher on the end,
Well,
with the max. What do you guys think?
The attendants are still at a minimum. That's what I'm saying to you. We still have that minimum wage.
No, but Steve, a lot of look at, like this, for example, sales office clerk is 8 to 10:50 now, and it's going 9 to 12. I'd say keep it 8, go 8 to 12.
Well, the sales office clerks, they do a little bit, they do a lot different than an attendant. They are actually waiting on running a.
I don't want to get in the weeds, Steve. Okay, you have them at 8 right now. Right. Okay, and so you're asking to go to a maximum of 12, so you can reward the ones that you want to reward. But why would you increase from 8 to 9 at the low end? It doesn't make any sense for a part-time 3 to 4 month job. If I could pay somebody 8, right, to come in the door, I'm going to pay them 8 if they're a good worker. If there's somebody who is doing a good job doing a good job, done it a long time, I see why you want to go to 12 if you have a couple like that who kind of keep the peace. They've been around a long time, you know, they know the drill. I get that, but that's my point of view.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay.
Nay.
No.
Motion fails, 4-1. Number 20, a motion to introduce, read, and accept as a first reading an ordinance of the Town of Narragansett providing that Chapter 984 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, be amended by the enactment of amendments to the budget for the Town of Narragansett fiscal year beginning the first day of July AD 2013, ending the 30th day of July AD, ending the 30th day of June AD 2014.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Discussion? Mr. Wojciechowski?
I just have a question on, I'm always concerned about surpluses and contingencies, and I'm just having difficulty because it is, it's really complicated. Is there some way you can tell me if the fund balance appropriation now, is that gone completely? It looks like there's no fund balance appropriation, so there's no contingency there. Then there appears to be a general fund summary here, $300,000 contingency. I just don't know how many contingencies and fund balances we have throughout. In other words, I'm worried about individual departments, whether it's school, whether it's wherever it is. How many contingencies and fund balances do we have? Extras, let's say extras.
If I could I address this?
Can you do it? Thank you. Thank you.
This is the current year budget.
Oh, this is the current one?
This is 20, this is current year, not next budget.
Not next, so that's the next,
And
I'm
this
on the
has
wrong one?
nothing to do with
Okay.
our
I
fund.
stand up for the other one then.
It has nothing to do with our fund, right. You
Okay.
need that, and this, I need to have the
Okay,
finance director come and explain why she's doing this.
okay.
Because I can't do it. I mean, I've tried. I tried.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This ordinance is to actually align the ordinance with the approved projects already by the council. It's basically just to get the numbers where they belong for all the approvals you've done so far this year. And I don't foresee any more changes now until June.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 21, a motion to adopt a resolution to repay the general fund for the funds transferred from the general fund to the beach in anticipation of storm-related repairs at the beach.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Ms. Kenyon?
What this is the money that was set aside from the general fund to the beach for rebuilding the cabanas. The council decided not to rebuild the cabanas, so this is just transferring the cash back from the beach fund to the general fund.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 22, a motion to read, pass, and accept a first reading of the appropriation ordinance for the fiscal year 2014-2015.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
First reading of the fiscal year 14-15 budget ordinance as we've discussed.
I think Mr. Wojciechowski has a question.
Contingency. Every fund has a fund balance as a nature of accounting. And the general fund does have a contingency line item of $300,000 in this next budget that is this level funded from previous years. No, just the general fund is the only budget with a contingency line item. You're welcome.
All in favor?
Wait, I have a couple of things.
Sorry, Mike.
2.46 increase, the Pam, is that what, in Laura? Yeah. That's the tax increase? So this is the budget, so this is what we've been working on, right? We've been struggling with it, and we have kind of two big things going on. Last year, people may remember, we had proposed a 3.8 tax increase. We got it down in the workshops to 2.2. This year it was, and we did a very we funded the ARC last year at about 50% annual required contribution. And then this year, we had a 3.9 was proposed, and so it's down to 2.46, which is good. And we're funding the ARC at 80%. So the thing we've been struggling with in this budget is two things, right? We have obligations that were not satisfied, that were not honored in the past. The ARC, the annual required contribution, averaged 49%. I looked at about the last 10 years, and the rough estimate of what was done was about 49%, fair to say, 49% over about a decade. By the same token, we do want to make sure for the taxpayer we keep our taxes as low as possible. So we went through a lot with this budget. I did ask Laura, I did email Laura a specific question that I brought up in the workshops, you guys might remember, and I didn't feel like we really came to resolution on it. And what this was settlement money we received this year, which was unanticipated. We could have gotten it at any time. It could have come 2 years from now. It could have come 2 years ago. Mark, would you mind just describing the settlement money that we got for the Bakari last year? Just, we talked about it in previous agenda, but just what that settlement money was from?
It was from, well, I forget the amount, but it was a.
It's $550.
It was a substantial amount that was resulted from a settlement of an ongoing tax dispute. The town had acquired the property at tax sale years ago. It had not been redeemed. There was an ongoing debate and discussion with the property owner about development, what was going to happen there. There was other intervening parties that not related to the town. Ultimately, the state condemned the property. We settled the litigation for a cash payment of $550. So that came in, I don't believe that was anticipated in the budget at all because we didn't know when the timing of that settlement might come. We've been paid, and that's a one-time revenue pickup, I believe.
Right, so in the budget, it comes in under miscellaneous receipts, and it's $550,000 of the $591. Now, again, this is unanticipated, and it's just going straight to our fund balance. Okay, so we have a fund balance of a certain amount, and right now it's about 8%. Little less than 8%. So, and what the fund balance is for lack of a better word, it's the money that we have kind of like a surplus that's carried year to year. Now, it does affect our bond rating if the fund balance gets too low. By the same token, not funding the ARC also is a factor that affects your bond rating. So in the past, we had average of 49% going to the ARC. Now we're going to 80%. I know there's a lot of little things that come in. Things come in under budget, things come in over budget over the years, over the past year. And I understand most of that should go to fund balance on average. If there's 1,000 here, 10,000 there, some goes up, some comes down, budgeted items. This is an unanticipated amount. It's $550,000. I felt strongly it should be returned to the taxpayer. That's my point of view on it, and I argued for that in the workshops. We never really came to a resolution on that. We never would have had it to begin with. It does take. Would like to see the fund balance that to be allocated from the fund balance to the taxpayer, which I believe would decrease the tax rate from 2.46 to about 1.46. Is that fair? Yes. Because I emailed just to ask what the 550, if it went, I wanted to find out if this 550 went back to the taxpayer, what would happen? And you said it, we would go, I'm sorry. You said an additional 1% is 526,000. It looked like 1%. I mean, you can tell, yeah. So that would mean we would go roughly down to about a 1.46% if we did this. So
I'm missing the accounting, and we got into this a little bit in the workshop. I'm just debiting and crediting in my head, right? In order to get it back to the taxpayer, it's coming into a revenue line item now, right? I don't have it in front of me.
It's miscellaneous receipts. No, Glenn, we talked about it. It's miscellaneous receipts. We're basically, what I'm saying is, sometimes it's a transparency issue for me, right? In that I'd like to see this be paid from the fund balance back to the taxpayer.
Maybe it's not, you're not taking it from the fund balance because it's not in there yet. You have to take it out of miscellaneous receipts and put it into
We said in the work sessions it was in fund balance.
No, it does, it has to,
Maybe I can help clarify. You are actually both correct. It would actually come out, and it would be an appropriation of fund balance. It would reduce the 6/30/2013 fund balance that we were working with, because we haven't closed our books for
Yeah, okay.
6/30/2014 yet, where this revenue, along with all the other activity for the year, will then have an outcome for
That's right.
6/30/14. But you would be actually reappropriating the fund balance from 6/30/13.
That's right, 'cause it's
into this budget, and it would be a line item reappropriating fund balance.
I have a question. Matt, you said we were funding the ARC at 49%?
An average over the last 10 years. I just looked at what we had gotten from either the Finance Committee or NIHART. I don't know if I brought it with me today, but I know it was an average of 49%. But that was over the last decade. That was correct, yeah. This year, we're 80.
I didn't think it was that high, was it?
yeah, well, some years it was 0,
Right.
and other years
That's
it was.
exactly the point I'm trying to make. A lot of those years, it was 0, and it was a lot less than the 49%, so that's not factual. Maybe last year was 49%.
Well, I just averaged them roughly, Doug. I didn't.
Roughly, but...
But Doug, no, it is factual. I just asked Laura if it's factual. What I did is I looked at what the percentage was each year, and I averaged those. So I know that's not a perfect math situation, but that's what the commitments were over the years. You want to say 40%, you want to say 30%, I'm saying we're going to 80. We're asking a lot of the taxpayer. I'd like to see us, it is a balance. I'm trying to figure this out. It's been a struggle to figure it out. This is what I think is, I kind of argued for it, and I'm regretful in our final work session I didn't do it, but we talked about other stuff, we talked about other allocations, and we just didn't kind of circle back to this discussion, so.
So if we don't do that plan, that money goes back, right? I don't know, I'd like to talk a little bit, it's a good idea a little bit, and I want to just,
What would happen?
what would
is
happen to the 550 if,
It gets rolled into all the other activities for this current year.
Yeah.
Goes to fund balance, and then for next year's budget, you would look at what your undesignated fund balance reserve ended up at June 30, and you would reallocate in next year's budget based on your 6/30/14 fund balance.
do you see any risk in doing that? Is it a bad idea? I'm just asking the finance director.
Not knowing how the year is going to end, you're actually taking reserves, anticipating a year that hasn't closed yet.
So you don't know what could happen?
Correct.
And we owe the fund balance for previous years, correct?
I'm sorry?
We owe the fund balance for previous years, various things. We took the money out of the fund balance, like last year, for instance.
Yes. And the reserve is slightly lower than I would like to see our undesignated fund balance.
Okay, that answers for me. Thanks.
So last year, when we had to deal with the hurricane, right, it was easy. We could tell our taxpayers, your tax rate went up partially because we had a hurricane, and we had to pay 25% of most, Jeff, right? Jeff, 25%, we had to pay 25% of those monies, right? That was not anticipated. That came in from, that we had to pay because of the hurricane. So we can say to people in the community, that's what happened. That's part of the reason your taxes went up. 550 comes in. If the money was never there, it wouldn't be in the fund balance, okay? If this litigation continued into 2018, that $550,000 wouldn't be in the fund balance. So this crisis of, the 550 we can't take from the fund balance, there'd be no crisis. So my argument is return it to the taxpayer. It's simple. That's what I think we should do. And that's what I've argued for. So I would amend the ordinance to make that change, and I think.
It's a good way to deal with this year's problem. I think to Laura's point, it just postpones a situation around how quickly can you raise it back up to a healthy place. You got to ask
But a
yourself.
lot of the reforms that we're trying to get, right, in the union negotiations are, you don't get a lot in the short term from them, right? So we're trying to find a way, right? A lot of our reforms, they don't really get us money in these first 1, 2, 3 years. So we've got to try these.
2-3 years. The reforms we're after is 10, 20, 30 years
Right, but
out.
if things like this happen, we should try to, instead of increase the tax rate in bad times, I'm thinking that we should give it back, right? Maybe next year, we won't be able to do it. We'll say, listen, and we had another Hurricane Sandy, and we do have to go to 4%. But
Yeah,
that's
but
my point.
Nat, don't we know that we're not gonna be able, we're gonna have tax increases next year, the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that? Don't we know that? Isn't that all the evidence that came out through all of our budget negotiations that?
Well, we're negotiating with 2 new unions right now, right?
Yeah,
Trying to
and
get, so the
like you
fifth
s-
that we talk about, the 80% arc, we want to show, right, the retirees that we are making that commitment. We also want to show the taxpayer that we are going to continue to advocate for them. So that's, I mean, I think it's a tough all around. It's not
Yeah,
perfect.
but you still have to you have to talk about the reality, and the reality is some major tax increases just to pay up your pension benefits alone, and that's what the people are not getting. They're not getting that.
I think the people
I think I'm in a
understand that.
different world listening to the conversation here tonight. I feel like I'm a little bit removed from the reality and the condition of this town, financially. I really do. And I find that troubling.
What are you removed from? The 550, you would never, if the litigation continued, wouldn't be in the fund balance, right? You would never, it would never be there to increase the fund balance.
It's a healthy debate.
Mr. Chorney?
I'll try not to reiterate everything that I said a couple of weeks ago. There are a couple of points, though, I think could be made in terms of what you're suggesting, Mr. Mannix. One is that it's a one-time deal. And as we in the Finance Committee believe, it's not going to help the next several years. There are changes, obviously, that have been made, and some of the contracts that have been negotiated. What the Finance Committee has recommended and is advising the Town Council is that those changes have not gone far enough. Essentially, you're funding a system that is unsustainable. I won't call it broken, it's just unsustainable. And you're continuing to try to fund an unsustainable program. You're only talking about one piece, which is the pension. You haven't even talked about the other post-employment benefits, or OPEBs, which, as we all know, are not being funded anywhere near 80%. So the focus always seems to be around pension, but there's also discussion of huge liability related to other post-employment benefits. The other point I would raise is that essentially what's in the budget now is you're giving up what's in the past has been essentially a built-in contingency. And by that I mean you have used as your collection rate on property taxes 98% figure. One of the ways you're reducing your budget, you're able to reduce your tax impact this year is you've gone to 98.5%. That 5% is about $200,000 to $300,000 round numbers. That number has generally resulted in only going at 98% and collecting a lot more. You essentially had a built-in surplus or built-in contingency that wasn't used, and that was going to either used for things that did come up during the course of the year, or that money did go into the surplus, or go into the fund, general fund balance, to build that up. That's going away if you're going in at a 98.5% collection rate now. So that's the other thing you're taking away right now, is something that was a built-in surplus or built-in contingency that generally wasn't used. You're taking that away by, in essence, reducing the taxes. What's happening is, candidly, and I'll say this is my view, I won't talk maybe from the Finance Committee standpoint, this is getting kicked down the road. The can continues to be kicked down the road. And a lot of discussion has been had over the course of the many months that this has been discussed, you know, how we ended up in this situation, be it town councils, unions, or whatever. The fact of the matter is, you're the town council now, and we'd like to see something happen. So to reevaluate the issues and to try to correct or lessen the impact on both pension and OPEBs going forward. So that's
To
what I'll say.
support this budget then? So would you vote for this budget if you were
I
here?
think as a committee, we would advise that the town council not accept this budget.
What do you propose we do?
I think somehow you've got to
You
fix
know,
the problem.
That's not-
You've got to fix the
President-
problem.
That's the thing.
Mr.
That's not-
President,
You've
that's
got to
not
fix the
fair.
problem.
You can't say that. That's
Well,
not that's
no,
not
no,
that's
no,
not
we
fair.
said-
Mr.
we
President,
told you.
Mr. President Harris, I think in all honesty, I think if anybody had the answer, we'd be the hero of Narragansett. They'd probably build a big monument, name it after us. If we had the quick answer, there's no quick answer after 25 years of neglecting the issues. There's no quick answer for this council to solve it all. And I've got the feeling that this budget is just what you described, it's kicking it down the road, because it's going to cost us more money because of some of the things we're not doing by stripping the whole capital improvement budget, literally from the town operating budget. Eventually, it's going to cost us more money. But like the president said, what's the answer? I don't know what the answer is. I know that the state won't allow us to raise taxes more than 4%. And the previous finance director had recommended we needed probably anywhere from 8 to 10% increase for the year. So how can you do it? Legally, you can't even fix it. So that's where we are, and I wish somebody had the answer. I certainly don't. And it's really sad. It's not a pretty picture. The 2.4 or 6% increase in your tax rate is not a pretty picture, because you're looking at the same thing next year, the year after that, the year after that, and God knows however long. And who can afford that in town? Who can afford that?
And as we said, I think what happens is a lot of things get deferred in terms of capital improvements. I mean, that's basically the way you got there this time around. You're deferring several $1 million in capital improvements, or at least when I say several, over $2 million in capital improvements. That's going to happen next year also. So it's going to happen over the next several years to get the pension and the OPEBs. I mean, you could probably get there with the pension, but again, you're not the OPEB. OPEB doesn't seem to come up as part of the discussion, but it's a huge liability also, and a huge cost.
Right, but year by year, we have to try to fix it, and I disagree that we've kicked the can down the road. Last year, James sat in the fire negotiations, I sat in the police, right? We talk about the FIP. We were able to, in those negotiations, we were able to get 25-year retirement for new hires. Okay, we were able to get, and that people might say not significant, that's only going to come in 20, 25 years from now, but there's 5 or 6 openings right now in the police, if I'm correct, right, Dean? Right, that will be, so, but in the short term, we've got to figure out the creative ways to do it. Next year, if we can find out a way to do it, that would be great. But we're trying to build on those reforms in the union negotiations, and they're really hard because there are people who feel that they're losing a lot of benefits. So we're trying to balance that. But we did, as a council, no council before that went with those fundamental 4 changes that actually I used from your presentation, Harris. So, I mean, we listened to you, right? You can't get them all in 1 year, right?
Yeah, but we've got to wait.
You're not going to get all those changes in 1 year.
Matt, we have to wait, like you say, short-term fix. 25 years is not a short-term fix. That's a long time.
Right, but
For me,
each
it's
year
a
you
long,
get
long
more,
time.
and each year you're going to get more. You're going to get better with each of them, right? So, right, we can all play this rhetoric game, but you know, some people will come at me and they'll send the emails about how everything's being kicked down the road, and I say, I've emailed back, do you want 80% funding of the York or the 4% tax increase? And then I don't get emails back.
7 years.
These are hard choices. We're trying to do it, okay? And we have instituted those reforms. And again, Pam can say, and Laura, we are trying to build on them with it, right? Fair to say, we're trying to do that.
7 years, we're talking about a 31% tax increase. I think that was the number that was thrown out there at one point. In 7 years.
Yeah, over the 6 years.
6 years.
Period, yeah. If you funded both.
Where's that money coming from? Think about that. 31%. Where's that money coming from? And you still have to deal with the capital improvement issues, the crumbling roads and schools and whatever else we acquire from not funding that capital improvement budget.
Let me reiterate, again, the Finance Committee recognizes that, you know, the town council and the town manager did get changes to the union contracts that have been negotiated thus far. They did. But when you look at where that's more longer term, when you look at where the dollars are, and you talk about the FIP and that you've done things for the FIP, the fact of the matter is when you look at the FIP, there's a line at the bottom of the FIP that I don't want to say it's ignored, but nothing happened with it. When you look at the FIP, the one last item, nothing to do with unions. And you know who, it's the group of retirees. It's just a fact of life. It's not, I didn't say it was easy. The Finance Committee didn't say this was easy. The Finance Committee says that's where the dollars are. That's where a lot of the dollars are, particularly on a shorter-term basis. And communities are doing it. Other communities are doing it. So,
We tried to do the best we could do, and unfortunately, it comes down to kicking the can down the road, in my opinion.
thank you.
Mr. Alba?
Actually, he was up here a lot longer than 3 minutes.
It's true.
It's true. Well, to me, first of all, we're talking about the unions. We should abolish the unions. I know you're all Democrats there, but so you're going to be backing them. But the thing is, the unions.
I'm an independent. I'm the only one up here who's an independent.
You're the only one.
Give me a
that's true.
break, Al.
All right. But unions have wrecked the country, more ways than not. I know I was working at Levington for a while there, and the unions come in, and heck, I mean, the country, that factory's not here anymore. And this used to be the jewelry center of the whole world, right here in Rhode Island. Along came the unions. It's not the jewelry center anymore. No, we definitely do not need unions. Unions wreck the whole country. I know I may get shot for saying that, but because most of them are run by gangsters and whatnot.
Jeez.
So.
Thank you, Mr. Alba.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
No.
Motion carries 3-2. We'll take a short break for 5 minutes. It's been a long night so far.
Polly, no hard feelings either way. I'm still traveling with you. No. Oh, good. Are you all right there?
All set? We have to go back to one motion, to make a motion to reopen number 12, to introduce, read, pass, and accept as a first reading an ordinance, an amendment of Chapter 74 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Narragansett, Rhode Island, entitled Traffic and Vehicles, and a motion to read, pass, accept, and introduce as a first reading a resolution amending the official list of parking restrictions and regulations in the Town of Narragansett in accordance with the Narragansett Code of Ordinances and add Sylvan Road.
That's
to
right.
the
Mr.
list.
Ferrandi just brought that to my attention. That's from a prior resolution. It was not picked up. I want to add Sylvan Road to the resolution that has tow zone requirements.
Someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Going back to number 23, a motion to schedule a work session between the Town Council and the Town Auditors, Bacon and Company LLC, regarding the fiscal year 2012-2013 annual audit on June 2nd, 2014 at 6:45 p.m.
That motion?
Second. Is that a Monday?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to schedule a work session to interview candidates for the ad hoc working group on URI Narragansett student rental issues on June 16, 2014 at 6:30 p.m.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 25, a motion to appoint, reappoint individuals to the Zoning and Plating Board, Minimum Housing Board of Review to fill 2 unexpired terms, 1 member to fill a term which will expire on 7/1/2017, and 1 member to fill a term which will expire on 7/1/2014.
So I move that we appoint Gene Kelly, who's existing as the alternate, for the full term.
Second.
Discussion?
So we have several vacancies on the zoning board right now. So several candidates came forward, and Gene Kelly is currently serving. I believe he's done 3 straight. We just interviewed the 3 candidates, and he's been 3 straight years as an alternate. So we are going, because he's had the experience, I would suggest that he be promoted, for lack of a better word, to the full-time position. That's my rationale.
So there were 3 people that we interviewed tonight, right? So,
And there are 2 other vacancies, so they.
yeah, so I'd like to also nominate, is it Robert Ferrara as well?
I'd second that.
So can we do those
Second.
together?
So we have two nominations for the full board, correct? The full board position?
No, we only have 1,
Well,
right?
I'm saying 2 nominations right now.
Oh, okay.
2 nominations
101.
to the full position, full board position. So
And
let's take,
just my rationale is, I think both, and everybody in the room would be qualified. I think Jean has sat there for 3 years as an alternate, and sort of view it as sort of, as an alternate, you sort of pay your dues to become a board member. I think any one of them would do a great job, but I just think, you know, he's sort of earned the right to sit at the committee proper.
all right,
So I don't know how you do, they have 2 names up.
2 names up, we'll take them.
And we have 2 other candidates. Rob is obviously one of them, and I've obviously known the Ferraros, and we know so, and I think he'd be a great addition. I just think that Gene Kelly's been on there for 3 years, kind of been doing the job. And traditionally, we tend to put somebody up if they want from the 1 to 5, unless there's a real problem. So that would be my rationale, but I don't know what other people think.
Mr. Wojciechowski?
I think we need a businessman on there. Mr. Ferraro, I think, would be an excellent candidate, and I want to suggest that you seriously consider putting him on there so we can get a perspective of a successful businessman on there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Kelly was nominated first, so all in favor of nominating Mr. Kelly to the full position on the zoning board?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Mr. Ferraro is nominated to a full position. Motion to appoint Mr. Ferraro to the full zoning board vacancy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
3-2, Mr. Ferraro is the new zoning board member. We also have Mr. Kelly remains
It remains on.
remains in
as
the
alternate.
So
alternate
now we
position.
have to nominate him and Sylvan
Right.
As the two
Vakaitis
alternate,
Right, so
right, so,
as the alternates.
go ahead, put him up. Are you going to do that, Matt?
You can do it.
All right, so I'll nominate, well, Gene Kelly's
Do
already
do
there.
you really? Because he's still the alternate.
Right.
I don't know. Good question, Mark.
Well, there are two vacancies right now.
No, just one.
No, there's an alternate and a full-time.
Yeah, there's an alternate and a full-time vacancy. So Gene Kelly asked to move up, which would have created a vacancy in his seat if you put him into the full-time. 'Cause there's two vacancies right now, right?
No, he's
No,
in
there's
an
only
alternate
one.
position right now.
I'm just listening to Ann, she's telling me there's two vacancies, though.
Right, there are.
Ann,
On the zoning board.
that's right, Dr. O'Neill and Sean Baxter, right.
But-
Dr. O'Neill is a full voting member. You just put in Mr. Ferrari as the full voting member. There's a Baxter position that was an alternate, that's still a vacancy.
Oh, I see.
What, so Kelly's not in the alternate position now?
Kelly, there's
He's
two
just going to
alternates
serve
on
out the rest
board.
of,
So then,
Kelly stays where he is.
right, and then you could
You could put
nominate the other.
Vakaitis as the alternate, right.
Someone like to make a motion
so
to?
I just want to make sure, yeah, the term for,
It's July, they're annual terms, Matt, they all.
so Gene will be up in like 3 months.
Yes, yes. So will Sylvan, if that's who you appoint for the vacancy for the other alternate.
Got it.
Less than 3 months.
So we're
2 months.
moving to appoint Sylvan Vakaitis to the
Second.
alternate position.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Number 26, motion to appoint Linda MacArthur to the Galilee Advisory Board to fill an unexpired vacant term, which will expire on May 31st, 2015.
I'll
So
move
moved.
that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 27, a motion to appoint individuals to the Historic District Committee to fill 2 unexpired vacant terms. 1 member to fill a term which will expire on November 1st, 2016, and 1 member to fill a term which will expire on November 1st, 2015.
Sandy Panzeri and, is that right, Gayla?
So just to straighten this out, there's, Ms. Panzeri is requested to be moved to one of the full-time positions, and that would leave open 1 full-time position and 1 alternate position. So,
So I'd like to, is it Gayla? Is that how you say her name? Gay?
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 Gaia.
Is it Gayla?
The other applicants are Gaia Sharon and Wayne Douglas.
All right, so Gaya Sharon would be the name I would put up for nomination. And then Wayne Douglas as the alternate.
Second that.
Say again?
I'll second that.
all right, so just to make it clear, Ms. Panzeri will fill the full term, Ms. Sharon to the
Next spot.
next term expiring on November 1st, 2015, and then
Wayne is the alternate.
Ms. Douglas as the new alternate expiring on 1/1/2015. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Number 28, a motion to appoint James Arrighi to the Housing Authority for a 5-year term will expire on April 30th, 2019.
That's a reappointment, right? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 29, a motion to appoint an individual to the Recreation Advisory Board to fill an unexpired vacant term which will expire on November 1st, 2014.
So moved. Oh, who we,
I didn't put a name there. 3 applicants.
Is Mr. Brady on one of the applicants there?
Yes.
I'd like to nominate him.
I can second, we have 3 names here. how do we, in the past, Ann, I mean, I'll second Doug, but we have 3 names, so, you know, we don't really know any of them. I mean, you just pick one. Okay. I mean, I know 2 of them, actually. That's part of my problem, I guess. I 2 of them pretty well.
Did you second it?
Yeah, I think
I
that was
second
a
it.
second.
Okay, can we vote?
I second it.
So the motion is to appoint Mr. Brady to the Recreation Advisory Board to fill an unexpired vacant term, which will expire on November 1st, 2014. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Number 30, a motion to appoint individual to the Land Conservancy Trust to fill an unexpired vacant term, which will expire on January 1st, 2014. The applicant is, the only one is Thomas Rogers.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Number 31, a motion on discussion and possible action regarding the Wood Avenue and South Trail Sewer Project.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Discussion, Mr. Hames?
I want to thank you for putting this on the agenda. As most of you know, this project started with signatures that were turned in, I think, just about a year ago. And it went forward till the town engineer had his certain people in place for certain jobs in October, and it finally, January 1st, some things started happening on it. What happens now, it's gone out to bid. It's gone out to bid at a very, very high rate. There's several questions about how they came up with this particular number, and also several questions about what will transpire if certain things are done. First of all, there's, I guess from the plan now, and Jeff, I haven't seen it, but somebody else did, there's supposed to be a manhole now placed at the end of Wood Avenue. Will other people be able to tie into this manhole? Would we get reimbursed, the people who did finance this, if people did tie in? Because if there's a manhole now, there's a manhole put there, then all of the west side of Boston Neck Road could be able to tie in. That's the first question. The other, originally when it came out, Jeff said the interest rate should be around 2%. It came in at 4%. I don't know how the thing doubled in the 9 months. The 2 proposals he sent out, one was for 50,000 plus and one was 43,000. One was with pumps, one without pumps. Not everybody would hook in right away, so I didn't know why the pumps were included in the initial proposal sent out to everybody. So what I'm trying to do is find a solution that we can get this accomplished without costing a lot of people a lot of money that do not have to tie in right now. There's only probably 4 people who have sewer systems that are not going to have to replace theirs in the next probably 15 years at max. What else would you like to know? I would like for you, what I would like for you to do is come up with a concrete figure and say, hey, can we send this out to bid, come back with numbers, and say, these are the concrete numbers on the thing. Come up with some way of saying, there is a way that other people could tie in, that money would come back to the people who initially footed the bill.
All right. Maybe I'm lost, but do we have the numbers of how many people on that street really want the sewers? Before we go out to bid, I'm just curious, do we have accurate?
I'm 2. 2 more. Another one. 5.
Is this how we're conducting the survey? 'Cause
no.
We should probably have Jeff talk about this.
When I'm finished, you get up.
When, I'm going to defer to the engineer and see
Well,
if he can...
I have asked people not to send some of the things in yet till we had this discussion tonight. There's another 3 people who were here that had to leave, or 2 people here had to leave that are also in favor of it. There are a number of people up and down South Trail and Wood Avenue that are in favor, even at this price. Do we want to go forward to this price? No. We would rather see it come in at a much more manageable price than this price.
Yeah, but I'm still concerned about if people want it. I mean, I drove down, I talked to people. I want to know what the numbers say on the street. Do people want it or not? Because I'm not sure what that is. So, I mean, we could go out to bid, but we don't even know if people want it yet. So I thought maybe somebody might have more accurate numbers on if.
Well, can you answer my question? If other people tie in, do we get reimbursed for that? That would make a difference in how some people would look at it.
Oh, so that's a good question. So that goes to Jeff, the engineer.
And how do we end up with the 2%, 4% instead of the 2%? It's also each house has got their own pressurized system, their own pumps. Okay, so once this system is put in, if somebody wants to divide a property, are they going to be able to put in a pressurized system and come and hook in back into the manhole? There's a lot of questions that are unanswered. Just to say, okay, let's do this. I'm not asking you to award anything tonight. All I want to do is come up with a concrete figure so everybody can sit down and say, okay, this is what the concrete figure is. Let's go up or down on it. I don't want to start a Hatfield-McCoy war.
What do we have to do to get to that figure? Obviously, we're not going to be coming up with it right here. What do we have to do to come up with?
I don't know.
What do you normally do to come up with a concrete figure? The
You
one
have
that
to go
you're
out to
looking
bid.
for? Pardon me?
You would have to go out to bid.
It costs money to go out to bid, and you don't know whether or not.
You've already got
there's the support.
16,000. You've already got 16,000.
Can you answer that, Pam, so we can clear it up?
I
can't give you any numbers.
I would have to defer to our town engineer who came up with these figures to tell us how he came up with these figures. Am I missing something? I'm confused.
Because is this it's not the normal process for,
I think we need Jeff to tell us what, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I do too.
What the normal.
What-
What is going on?
Unfortunately, I didn't have access to any of these questions until I heard them 5 minutes ago, but I will do my best to answer them. As far as whether other connections that eventually may be allowed past the 21 in this particular group, that's a policy decision that you will make. In the past, for instance, the North End Sewer Project, as X number of people were figured in the initial assessment and they received an assessment to tie in, maybe there was a lot split 3 years down the road and another person was allowed to tie in. The original group did not get a refund. But that's a policy decision that you may make on a case-by-case basis. As far as number 2, the interest rate, the
Jeff.
council has made it very clear with their decision on Jerusalem that you're not interested in borrowing or bonding for a sewer project right now. The 2% was predicated a year ago on the possible borrowing through the state's SRF program. If you don't wish to do that, and again, that's your choice, I'm estimating the interest that the town would borrow the money outside the program at 4%. I can't predict what that rate's going to be. I'm not in the bond business. I'm estimating it at 4%. The third one about the 2 proposals, pumps versus the no pumps, that's just a matter of simple economics. Everyone that ties in to the Wood Avenue South Trail system will need to buy a pump. We ran the cost estimates 2 ways, with or without us buying the pumps. I think we have a little bit more buying power and at a discount rate to buy 21 pumps than Wynn and all the neighbors do going one at a time to a pump supply house. That's why we ran it that way. It doesn't really matter to me whether we buy them or not. It's actually simpler for the town if we don't buy them. But I thought we were doing the residents a favor by pricing it out that way. As far as the numbers are based on a design plan, and they're based on current construction costs in Rhode Island that the engineer has calculated for us. To get the real number, you have to put it out to bid, you have to build it, and you have to see what the final dollar amount comes in at. I don't know what construction contingencies may happen along the way. There will be rock excavation. There will be blasting. Will we break a few water lines when we blast? Probably. I don't know that. Well, you won't know the final number until you actually build it. And as far as putting it out to bid, I would strongly recommend against that until you're committed to move forward with the project. If we sample the waters by bidding, all we've done is aggravate the contractors that spend a lot of time and effort putting their numbers out there in public. And then if we're not ready to move forward with the project, the next time we go out to bid, we'll see contractors not be as aggressive. And we've seen that happen before. Now, the survey results will be due this Friday. Once the survey results come back, the council will have a better sense, based on the estimated costs, of what the public's interest or what the 21 property owners' interest in the project is. I seriously feel that tonight is premature to even to make any kind of decision on it.
Well, I have that same note, so did but the agenda item, it came from you, or it doesn't seem like it did?
I wrote the agenda item.
Okay, it did, so, but, because it does seem premature if we have the surveys back.
I understand that, but with the numbers, Matt, it's like, if you're expecting something like, and Jeff could probably tell what, there was
Yeah.
transport, Osprey. What was the project you mentioned that, there was a project similar to this that had been done?
Anglers Court?
Anglers Court. Okay, what numbers did they come in?
I don't remember. Anglers
So,
Court was several years ago.
Jeff,
There
what
was
we're
also no ledge on Anglers Court and no rock excavation. That's one of the bigger driving factors in this, is that based on the soil borings that were taken, we are anticipating a fair amount of rock excavation. That drives the price a lot higher than any of us would have anticipated.
we're waiting for a price on Friday, right, Jeff?
No, what we're waiting for is the results of the survey.
Results of a survey.
Yeah. The price that
And
you
what will
have
that-
right
what-
now is...
What will that survey tell you, for my information?
What we did with the survey, Doug, and it was included in your packet tonight, we sent out to the residents a survey with the estimated cost that the engineering firm had developed and where we thought the assessment would be over 20 years. So we wanted to give the folks, basically, the 21 property owners have every piece of information that we have at this point. We have an estimated cost developed by a professional engineer after soil borings and design. We have an estimated borrowing rate, and again, that's strictly up to you if you want to go after a low-interest loan on it. I'm just reacting to the council's previous decision on Jerusalem when you said you didn't want to incur any bonding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yes, sir.
My name is Mike Jennings, and property owner on South Trail, 14 and 18 South Trail. I am interested in the sewer project. I think I live in an environmentally sensitive area. The Chafee Bird Sanctuary abuts my property, wetlands also abut my property. One of the things that I did myself today was I checked on grinder pumps, and I contacted Grinder Pumps USA, and a single unit is $2,500, which would meet specification of the town. Anything significant number of units for the whole project would be $2,100. So I think, I think we need to really take a look at this. I think that there is value to what this project would bring. I think it would raise property values of the houses, and environmentally, I think it would do a service to the town. So I'd like to see some real number crunching involved in this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alba? It's a late night.
Do you have to extend it? What time? 11:15?
I'm sure if everybody had an option to tie in, they definitely would tie in. Because I know we were lucky on Bonneview Drive, where my son has a house where we had cesspools, and they came up as far as our house, so we took advantage of that and tied right into it. So I don't see why anybody wouldn't want to tie in. Thank you.
So at this point, you're just waiting to get the sewer surveys back, and from your perspective, it looks like it's pretty close, right? It's a very close vote, whatever it's going to be. I mean, it's only, what, 21 people?
Yeah, it's a question, I'm 90% sure.
Can you go to the microphone?
Sure. I'm 90% sure we will have enough to go forward with the project. My problem is there are people on the road who it's not fair to who have put it in systems at this price. Now, is there any way we can resolve instead of having them pay this type of a money when they just put a system in? I mean, I don't know how to do it. I mean, like I said, I don't want to start a Hatfield-McCoy war.
Right, so they just spent a lot of money putting in a septic, so they might not want it. And if
Well, I don't
it
blame them.
happens-
Of course they're not going to win.
Yeah,
I don't blame them.
yeah, so what
So,
would
and
be
these numbers just came in a lot higher than than I anticipated or anybody anticipated.
But you're still close to, I mean, you don't know what the result's going to be, right?
It's $2,200 a year
No,
now.
no, the results of the survey.
No, I had purposely asked people not to send it in until the.
But I'm
until
saying, you
tonight.
don't know if the survey's going to come back in favor or against the sewers, right?
I'm pretty sure I know.
I mean,
But
is
that's
it,
beside
is
the
it,
point.
Why
is
don't
it,
we
is
wait
it
till we get
positive or
that
negative? I
survey
mean,
back?
I think it's going to be positive.
well, I
But
mean, I
typically,
think-
we don't go until, if we have 51%. Jerusalem wouldn't have got there. Jerusalem like eked over the, if people remember, Jerusalem eked over the line and there was a significant majority against it. It wasn't like a unanimous thing, right? So, but in this case, we really don't, it doesn't come to us until the 51% is hit with the surveys. So it seems a little bizarre.
No, well, I know.
I know where you're coming. I get it. You're trying to find a I get it. I
I'm
mean,
just trying to find a
I'm for
happy
creative
medium.
solutions
I'm
too,
just-
but I mean,
if it's
Is there a happy
it's not
medium
the.
for everybody?
If it's a
I don't
10,
know.
11 to 10 vote against, I mean, I think there's something we could probably do to look at other options. I mean, it's so close. I don't know. I mean, there's plenty of, I don't think it's written in stone at that point, but that's just one perspective.
I think we should just wait until we get the information and then make a decision. I mean, we're kind
I
of,
also have other people who would like to join the project.
say again?
We also have other people who would like to join the project. So, you know,
Yeah, so Friday, the survey will say what the
Friday.
percentages, and then we can look at that and see how many people. I mean, I think it's great that you want sewers. I do worry about those people that have bought the septics
Yeah, I
and
do.
really don't want to be involved and to have them have the, you know, to have to pay the finances on something that they already just bought themselves. I don't know if there's a solution to that, but I would feel bad for the people that aren't
the
interested.
answer, even the ones that are there probably in 20 years with what's happening, they're probably going to have to be replaced sometime before the 20 years. Just about everybody in that neighborhood, if you're familiar with that neighborhood, it's a very, very wet neighborhood. We had Sandy, we had a major river running through there with Sandy. We had another major river running across at this last major storm we had this springtime. It's just, it washes out things. So, but if we want to have the survey, we can have the survey. If that's what you want to wait for.
I mean, I think that,
Wanna table it?
Yeah, and it's just a discussion anyway,
Yeah.
possible action too, I guess.
Do you want to table it?
It's up to you.
Let's table it until we get the results of the survey in.
All in favor?
aye.
I'm sorry. Oh, who? I'm sorry.
Oh, Polly.
Oh, yes, Polly.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, is that what it is? We gotta make a motion?
Yeah, it's
I'm
fine.
not going to keep you long. Polly Kelly, 17 South Trail. You've all seen me up here before. My question was, I really didn't understand why it was even on the agenda tonight, since the survey's on until the 23rd. Personally, I felt like once the surveys were in, you saw where the votes were, then we went forward from it. Obviously, you all know my position. I'm not in favor. I just spent $45,000. I appreciate Wynn trying to help and say, you know, people have just done it. You know, my thing is, see where it is, but I think it's an awful lot of money to make. I know there are a lot of people opposed. There's a lot of people that are for it. I understand why they're for it. If I had an old system, I'd be for it too. But I know there's a lot of us that have just spent $45,000 on new systems that really don't need to incur another $55,000 when I have a
Right,
system that's working.
We'll just see what the surveys come back and go from there. That's the
No,
only thing we
and
can do, I think.
absolutely. And that's all I just wanted to say. I just wanted to give you a different point of view than has been presented already tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Polly.
Because Pam, you emailed the council to keep this agenda item on. I just emailed you back saying that we wanted to wait till the 23rd.
I requested to have that.
Oh, you wanted
put on.
it on.
Yes, I was the one who requested it.
So the motion currently is to table it to the next meeting, I think. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. McSally, do we need an extension?
Your rules say quit at 11 unless you vote to extend no later than 11:30. So we need a vote to extend or continue the other two items till the next meeting.
You got one more
Well, I
actually,
got
right?
really one item, and I don't think it'll take 5 minutes. It
So we
shouldn't
still need
anyway.
to extend,
Yes.
so I'd move to extend the meeting to 11:15.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Mr. President,
Number 32. A motion to discuss and a motion on discussion and possible action on the tow zone signs in Eastwood Look and Galilee.
We've already discussed that, so if you can...
I'll second that.
What? I'm sorry. It's getting late. I should have been in bed an hour ago.
So, do you want to just?
I'll make that motion. Susan second. Doug, you're up.
That what are we on, 32?
Yeah.
That we remove 32, if that's okay. We've already discussed it. The only thing I'd ask the manager to is check into that sign situation. I'd like to have an answer to that before the end of the week as to when we're going to get those tow zone signs done and up on the poles. That's all.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Great. That's all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Number 33, a motion on discussion and possible action on trash violations on dumpsters in Galilee.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Okay. The Department of Public Works sends a truck once or twice a week down to Galilee to the trash barrels that are located all along from the escape road all the way down the road all the way down to George's. I guess they empty them all a couple of times a week. 2 men in a truck. Most of the rubbish that's in the barrels that are near the escape road, the trash from Great Island. There are several people from Great Island that choose not to employ a trash hauler. They decide to go down and they drop the trash in these barrels. If the barrels are full, they just throw them on the side of the barrel so the seagulls can get at them and rip them apart. It's just not right, and we have an ordinance against that. And what I would like the town manager to do is instruct Public Works they can do it in the form of a sticker or post signs if they want. They could probably put the stickers on the barrels. And there was some discussion about having video cameras. I have since found out that that may not be necessary because I understand the Department of Environmental Management down there, the Port Authority has several cameras. As a matter of fact, they use the cameras to monitor a lot of the dumpsters and barrels down there that get the same kind of use. So it's grossly unfair to everybody that we have to provide that service. All winter long, it's not tourist trash, it's our residents' trash that's there, and it needs to be fixed. Maybe you could just have a sticker type thing to place on the individual barrels instead of putting the signs up or whatever you want to do.
What would you like the stickers to say?
Pardon me?
What would you like the stickers to say?
Well, just quote the ordinance, the ordinance that we have that's in violation of. You could probably just 2 or 3 lines, break it down there with maybe with a trash barrel with a red circle around it with a red X through it. I don't know.
Okay.
It might work. There was a discussion about the video cameras. I don't think I don't think you need to do that. I think you can work something out with DEM down there.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. That's it. Have a good night.